So let's pray. Dear Father in heaven, we ask for your Spirit to be here this evening as the Sabbath hours are drawing. Here it's already Sabbath, but other places it may not be. But we ask for your Holy Spirit to be poured out upon this Sabbath and your blessing to be here. We pray for each person. We pray for this movement. And we ask, Lord, that as we try to sort through in as simple a manner as possible the lines that you've given us and the light that you've given us for our feet, that we can see clearly the path that is before us. And we ask for wisdom and understanding in all things. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So I'm going to erase what I have here, and I'm going to basically draw it again. So this was a study from yesterday. And this evening, as we go through the lines that God has given us, it's part of a study that I definitely want to do in the future. After we've finished Ezekiel, I want to go back and rehearse all of the light that this movement has been given in the past, right from 1989 and so on. So this is basically a short summary of some of these things. It's not everything, but it's focusing upon the lines. And so some of this I've explained in other studies, but I want us to look at this together, to look at what God had given us and just rehearse the lines, the history of the lines. So when we look at Jeff's early material, we know that he had a line with 3 waymarks. And this one simply was the time of the end, the Sunday law, and the close of probation. This is the way that the lines first were presented. And what's the important part here? I shouldn't say that they're all important, but where's the goal? What's the aim of these lines? What's the purpose of this line? Can anybody tell us? What is this line about?
Basically showing us where we are in Earth's history.
Yeah, it shows us where we are. And why do we need to know where we are?
So we don't repeat our mistakes.
Okay, so we don't repeat mistakes. What more? How about that we can be prepared for the events that are coming?
Right.
So we need to be prepared for these events, and God gave us these lines as a means of preparing us. He wanted us to know that something is coming, and we need to know how to get there. We need to know how to get ready for that. Now, in this initial line, which goes back before 9/11, obviously 9/11 is not in this line. The focus was that there's going to be these tests, and one would be the Sunday law test, and then we would have this close of probation. And the idea developed of a 3-step testing prophetic message being the gospel, and that it's going to prepare and demonstrate 2 classes of worshipers. So you're going to demonstrate, and the one group will be past that test. It will go on and in this test to finally demonstrate and reveal Christ's character. Now, as we started to move through this history, as 9/11 passed, we started to see that there was 9/11, and then there was the Sunday law. Now, the close of probation, of course, is over here, but there was this understanding that we had this Sunday law that we were being prepared for. And so the line was something like this: 1989, 9/11, the Sunday law. The close of probation, which we had in this line, and I'm not sure exactly if this is the next step that happened, but definitely we had a point where we had a line like this. But then we started to recognize that there was the midnight cry. So this would be about 2014. And 9/11 ended up being the beginning of this line. And part of this was a development of an understanding that we were repeating the message or the parable of the 10 virgins. So I want to read this statement here from the Spirit of Prophecy. Now, it's in the Review and Herald, August 19th, 1890. I'm going to have to make this much bigger for people to see it. So she says, when the third angel's message is preached as it should be, power attends its proclamation, and it becomes an abiding influence. It must be attended with divine power, or it will accomplish nothing. I am often referred to the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 of whom were wise and 5 foolish. This parable has been and will be fulfilled to the very letter, for it has a special application to this time, and like the third angel's message, has been fulfilled and will continue to be present truth to the close of time. Now, there's some important things that we see in this. The first that we see is that we have a repeat of something specific to the very letter. And what is it that's repeated according to this statement? What's going to be repeated to the very letter?
The experience of the story.
Okay, so the parable of the 10 virgins, and because it has been fulfilled, and it will be fulfilled to the very letter. So this is the parable of the 10 virgins, and it has a specific application in Millerite history. That often we will say that Millerite history is going to be repeated to the very letter, but it's actually talking about the parable of the 10 virgins being repeated or being fulfilled to the very letter, because it has been fulfilled in Millerite history, and it's going to be fulfilled in our history, for it has a special application to this time. And this special application is what we believe that we are going through in this movement. So we believe that this special application is talking about these lines that we have. And then she says, and like the third angel's message, so she's comparing it now to the third angel's message. So what's the difference between the parable of the 10 virgins and the third angel's message?
One is to a select group, the other is to the world.
Okay. That's true. So that's a good point. And which actually applies to the question that I'm asking. But when was the third angel's message fulfilled? Because it says it has been fulfilled and will continue to be present truth, talking about the third angel's message. So when was the third angel's message fulfilled?
About the only time that we could really say that would be 1844.
Right. So we would say it's 1844. And wrong here. Let's go here. I'm just doing something here with.
But I guess the best way you could say it is that it was imperfectly fulfilled in 1844.
Okay, so it was. Well, I wouldn't say that it was imperfectly fulfilled. I believe it was fulfilled in 1844. It was just the arrival of the third angel's message. The point that I'm making is that the parable of the 10 virgins was fulfilled under the first and second angel's message. Would you agree with that?
Okay, so if it was fulfilled, yes, I could agree with it, because what we call the first angel's message contains elements of all three.
Right, but the point that I think that she's making, though she's not trying to state it directly, but she is saying that the parable of the 10 virgins was fulfilled, and we would say it was fulfilled under the first and second angel's messages. right? In that application, when she says it has been fulfilled, it was fulfilled in Millerite history.
Okay, linguistically, I would agree with you because
Right.
You're supporting the premise with the verbiage used.
Right. So, and then she says that the third angel's message is the same thing. It has the same idea that it has been fulfilled and it will continue to be present truth until the close of time. So she's comparing what happened under Millerite history with what's happening under the third angel's message. So Millerite history in this sentence here, in this paragraph, when she's presenting this, she's showing that the third angel's message is separate from this first and second angel's message, because in the second angel's message, the parable of the 10 virgins was fulfilled under the first and second angel's message. But she says that parable of the 10 virgins will be fulfilled again to the very letter. So it has a dual fulfillment. It has a fulfillment to Millerite history, which occurred under the first and second angel's message. And it's going to be fulfilled in the future to the very letter. But how is it going to be fulfilled under the third angel's message? That's the question I think that we have to answer. And the thing that we haven't really, I don't think we even really have asked the question. That's why we don't have the answer to it. Because she says, what's that?
I know.
Okay, what, Mark?
You say it is finished. We'll wait for Christ to say it's finished.
Okay, well, I understand what you're saying, but we're making a specific application here. So let's go to the board again, and I want to show you what I mean. So here it is. So this is what I did yesterday. I had drawn this line. So this is the line that Ellen White is talking about. And I'll put it, the full line. We have 1798. We have 1833. We have August 11th.
BC.
No, these are AD, Mark. This isn't BC. And then we have April 19th, 1844, and July 21st, and August 15th, and October 22. These are all in 1844. And this is the 5th day of the 4th month, the 1st day of the 5th month, the 10th day of the 7th month. And I'll just put this is 1844, and this is the 1st day of the 1st month. So these are the waymarks in Millerite history. And we would, if we're going to say that Ellen White says the parable of the 10 virgins occurred in this history, where would we start the parable of the 10 virgins?
Wouldn't you have to start it at 1798?
Yeah, and so why would we do that? Not just, because we have. So we need to look at that parable of the 10 virgins. So why would we start the parable of the 10 virgins in 1798?
Well, we've established this as a line of not just the Millerites, but of the time of the end.
Right, so it's a line of the time of the end. But if we look at the parable of the 10 virgins, so I'll just bring this up on the screen and look at this passage. So,
I know it is after 2 more weeks, and this month, it will be 22nd.
Okay, but yeah, let's not worry about that right now, Mark. I want to look back at what Jesus said in Matthew 25. It says, then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. So this is a proclamation of the gospel. And what is the message that began in 1798? If we go to Revelation 14 and we look at
First angel's message.
Yeah, it's the three angels' messages. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth, the sea and the fountains of waters. So when we look at this parable of the 10 virgins, Jesus is now illustrating these messages that were given beginning in 1798. Now, of course, we could argue that nothing happened in 1798 specifically, but it was the time of the end. So, Miller isn't proclaiming in 1798, he's not proclaiming the message, but we see that they have their lamps. And this idea of this lamps, if you look at Ellen White, what she talks about these lamps and these lights in illustrating the first, second, and third angels' messages, we can see that this is this increase of light. That's what these lamps are. And this is the kingdom of heaven. This is the gospel. Now, 5 of them are wise and 5 were foolish. So we know that many people had these lamps. And so it can't just be referring to 1844 when we deal with the parable of the 10 virgins. We would have to go all the way back to 1798. And then this is the study of scripture, because what is the lamp? I know it has different illustrations, different ways, but what is this lamp that they have?
The lamps that they would have would be their character, their fitness for the kingdom of God.
Right. So that's one application we can have. So I'm not saying that that's not correct. But when we look at the Bible, we study in the Bible and we look at lamps, lamps refer to what?
Light upon the pathway.
He is wrong.
Right. So light that comes upon the pathway. So the Bible is a lamp. God's word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. Now, we can also see that this idea of the oil would be the Holy Spirit. And we could look at this in one way as God's word, and the oil is the Holy Spirit that's used to interpret and understand God's word. We also know that there's an application here that has to do with character. Hey, Mark, can you mute your mic for now? Because I can hear too much noise there. Thanks. So we know that they have this oil, and we can apply it to character. There's lots of ways we can look at this parable. Ellen White has 3 different ways in which she interprets this parable. But when we look at it as Millerite history, it has to do with God's word being opened up and the oil being the Holy Spirit, and the vessels that have the oil, these could be seen as different things, but I would think that is connection with ourselves as being the vessels in a symbol. So I'm not trying to say that there's only one way to interpret this or I have the right way, but I'm just saying, as far as we're looking at this as a parable, this is about an increase of light. And we know that there's going to be this wedding, and that wedding we're going to understand in Millerite history when we apply it is Christ going from the holy to the most holy place. That's the way that it's applied in Millerite history. But we know we can take this at the end of time and also make an application that wouldn't, of course, be Christ going from the holy to the most holy. My point here is that when we look at the lines that we have, and we look at what Ellen White's saying about the parable of the 10 virgins, we know that there's a fulfillment that occurs in Millerite history, but there's also a fulfillment that occurs in our history, and that the model for that fulfillment is Millerite history. So she doesn't say it's going to be repeated to the very letter. She doesn't say it that way, but she says it has been fulfilled and will be fulfilled to the very letter. So the implication is that she is saying what happened in Millerite history under the proclamation of the first and second angel's message. So this would be the first, and then this is going to be the second. She says is now going to happen under the third angel's message, because the third angel's messages can continue to the end of time. So we know the second angel message arrives here. So we'll just block this off as the second angel's message. And then the first angel's message is here. So I'm just doing this. We obviously can deal with each of these waymarks. Now, what we did in understanding these lines is we know that the third angel arrives here. So we would do the third angel arrives. And that the third angel is formalized at some point in history. Now, I have made the argument in the past, whether this is correct or not, but I've always placed the formalization of the third angel's message in 1888. So that's been my interpretation of understanding that the third angel arrived and that it's formalized in 1888. But a person could argue that it was rejected in 1888, and so that maybe wouldn't be the formalization. So I'm not stating that that is correct or not. The point that I'm making is that at some point, the third angel has to be empowered. Now, Ellen White talks about this other angel. So I'm going to read some statements regarding this other angel that comes. And we're going to be familiar with these statements. These aren't anything new to us. The proclamation of the first, second, and third angel's messages has been located by the word of inspiration. Not a peg or pin is to be removed. No human authority has any more right to change the location of these messages than to substitute the New Testament for the Old. And then she uses this analogy. For the Old Testament is the gospel in figures and symbols. The New Testament is the substance. One is as essential as the other. The Old Testament presents lessons from the lips of Christ, and these lessons have not lost their force in any particular. So now she applies this to what happened under the first and second angel's messages. The first and second angel's messages were given in 1843 and 1844, and we are now under the proclamation of the third, but all three of the messages are still to be proclaimed. It is just as essential now as ever before that they shall be repeated to those who are seeking for truth. By pen and voice, we are to sound the proclamation, showing their order and the application of the prophecies that bring us to the third angel's message. There cannot be a third without the first and second. These messages we are to give to the world in publications, in discourses, showing in the line of prophetic history the things that have been and the things that will be. So what is she doing here with this illustration in this paragraph? What is she tying together? Specifically in the last sentence, she shows.
Illustrating the end from the beginning.
Right, the end from the beginning. That's the main principle that she's using here in her application. So she says the first and second angel's messages were given. We're now under the proclamation of the third. But she recognizes that the history of the first and second angel's messages give us light to the third. So she's not just saying, we know what happened in the past and we need to tell people about that. She is saying that the things that have been and the things that will be are connected. So this is an important point that we have understood in this message. Now, she talks about this other angel. Angels were sent to aid the mighty angel from heaven, and I heard voices which seemed to sound everywhere. This is in early writing, so this is one of her early visions. Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. This message seemed to be an addition to the third message. Joining it as the midnight cry joined the second angel's message in 1844. Now, this is a really interesting statement. This one I hadn't really thought about before. I mean, I know I've read it, but the midnight cry joined the second angel's message. And I never thought of it that way. Why is she saying the midnight cry joined the second angel's message? What is she trying to illustrate here?
That the midnight cry was providing greater light as to how we are to glorify God.
Yeah, so we know that now the cry went out at midnight. In Ellen White's understanding of it and the way that she presented, she says that the midnight cry actually was given midway. So she recognizes that the midnight cry was given on July 21st, 1844. So we have to be careful here in that when we look at where the midnight cry joined the second angel. So I better go back here. So the second angel arrives here on April 19th, but the midnight cry joins it here. Correct? According to Ellen White, she says midway,
right,
the cry was given at midnight. But we look at this as the empowerment of the midnight cry. So when we call this midnight and the midnight cry, we see them actually as parts of the same waymark. That is, the angel joins here, but it's going to swell to a midnight cry. The same thing is going to happen in our history. So in our history, I'm going to draw our history down here. I'm just going to do it in a short way here. So it's not parallel to what's above. But we have 1989. And then we would say that the second angel arrives. So this is kind of this history here. I will line this up here. No, I'm going to try to line this up because otherwise it makes it hard. So I'm just going to put all this here. We got 1989 over here, but I'm not going to fill all this other stuff in. For now, I'll just put, this is 9/11, and 9/11 is the arrival of the second angel, just as this is. Second angel arrives, here the second angel arrives. Now, the second angel is the fourth angel. They're the same. It's the fourth because it follows the third, but the second angel, which in this history has a midnight cry join it, the midnight cry joins it here at midnight, and it swells to a midnight cry where it's empowered. So if we look at our history and we look at 9/11, we have this second angel arriving, and we also know that it's also 9/11 lines up with August 11th, 1840. So this is the empowerment. The first angel is empowered. So I'll deal with that later. But we know that it joins the second angel now, or this other angel is going to join the third angel. Now the first and second angel's message has already happened. So in what way does the second angel join the third? And what is the second angel? Why does it join at 9/11? Because it joins at 9/11.
Is it the beginning of the empowerment that you're looking for?
Well, I'm looking for the condition here. What happened on April 19th that the second angel arrived?
Isn't that the beginning of some of Snow's letters?
Well, it's not the beginning. Snow's letters begins on February 16th. Okay, this is Protestants. Who was being tested under the first angel's message?
The Protestants were. So
okay.
You're saying it's the close of probation for the Protestants.
Right. So this is the close of probation for the Protestants. And then this is going to be the Millerites. And we know that the Millerites now are going to be tested under the second angel's message. And their probation is going to close on October 22nd, 1844. Now, when we look at this history, what group of people is being tested from 1989 to 9/11?
Seventh-day Adventists.
So this is SDAs, right? Seventh-day Adventists are being tested in this history. And at 9/11, the organization or the structure, its probation closes. So probation for a Seventh-day Adventist hasn't closed because there are still Adventists who aren't part of this. But the structure or the organization, which has gone through a period of darkness and come out of that period of darkness to be in this increase of light, they're rejecting that light. And we see the same thing in Millerite history. The Protestants go through this period of darkness, and as they come out of this darkness, some Protestants are going to receive that light, and they become Millerites. Some Seventh-day Adventists are going to receive this light, and they're going to become Levites. So Levites are Seventh-day Adventists. Millerites are Protestants. But these are ones who are searching for light. These are ones who have rejected light.
Now,
So
are you saying the structure, or are you saying leadership, or are you saying both?
Both structure and leadership. To me, they're the same thing.
So you're looking at those as being synonymous.
Yes, in this context here. Because obviously you have an organizational structure which has leaders, and those leaders have rejected light. And so it's not going to be the leadership and the organization, the structure, that's going to receive light. These Levites are Seventh-day Adventists, but they're not the structure. They're not the leadership. The leadership is going into darkness, and they're going to be passed by. And we know in this history, Miller is rising. And in this history here, we see people accepting light. And then 9/11 is going to be this point in which light comes. And now we have here, this is dealing with Protestants. And Protestants are going to come into this history as well. Because in this history, the first horn falls. And in this history, the second horn falls. And it's in the fall of the second horn that we're going to see the joining of the two sticks happen. That the Protestants who had fallen away, not personally because they're dead, but the people who are the ancestors of those beliefs in that movement that are still Protestants, when they see the second horn fall, they're going to recognize it for what it is, because they actually are Protestants. They're not fallen Protestants. They're going to be true Protestants, and they will join with us. Now, we line this up with the Sunday law. That is, Jeff has taken these waymarks, called this 9/11, midnight, the midnight cry, and the Sunday law. And so we have these waymarks in our line of the Levites. So we're going to have midnight and the midnight cry. And if we look at the parable of the 10 virgins, it's fulfilled in this history, but it ends here on October 22nd, 1844, because this is midnight. The cry goes out at midnight. Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. It's empowered here. All these people go out to meet the bridegroom. But a few, the 5 wise, they have oil in their lamps. They understand God's word, and they have done a preparation necessary that they're going to recognize the work that occurred here. And that is Christ will have moved from the holy to the most holy place.
Okay.
Now, yeah.
Before you go further,
Okay.
as a question,
Okay.
taking these lines as you're lining them up,
Mhm.
is there a way that we would line this up also with the life of Christ?
Yes. Yes, there is a way we would line it up with the life of Christ.
Okay, because I guess the question I'm getting at is this.
Yeah.
If we're placing that the organization and the leadership are synonymous,
Yeah.
then in the life of Christ, we know that at his birth, that the leadership and the organization were largely passed by because they refused to accept that his birth could occur at that point. Running as to when Christ began his ministry, if that would not be considered almost like midnight, and then the okay, the baptism, yeah.
So this is the birth of Christ,
right?
Time of the end,
right?
And then we're going to have his baptism. Now we're also going to have when he goes to the temple when he's 12 years old. That's going to line up with the formalization of the message, is the way that I look at it. We could also argue John the Baptist is the formalization of the message as well. And John baptizes Christ. This would line up here. And then you're going to have the experience that happens here that leads to the Sunday law, which is the cross, right? Just to really briefly look at the life of Christ.
John, not Peter.
Yeah, John the Baptist. So if we look here, we can see that the first angel's message is the message that's going to take this is Jews, right?
Right.
And then we're going to see that Christians, the disciples, are going to come, and then they're going to have a test as well. And the test for the disciples ends with the Sunday law, which is the cross.
But see, what I guess what I'm getting at is, if the midnight cry was to line up with the beginning of his ministry.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
Midnight.
Well, see, I look at midnight as actually the test for the disciples. That's the way I look at it. But maybe I'm wrong, because the disciples actually are a special case. If you really want to look at the disciples, who do the disciples line up with in our history? And who do they line up with in Millerite history? Because we've talked about Ezekiel. We've talked about the priests, right? That's our line. We have snow, and we also have the disciples. We actually taught this, that the disciples line up with the priests. And we can see that also Ezekiel and snow.
Well, okay, but would the disciples and the priests, or at least part of them, line up with the 144,000?
So what you're doing is you're dealing with another line. Yeah, so what I'm trying to say, when we look at this history, one of the problems that we have, so I've spent time dividing this line out, saying that there's these two groups, Protestants and Millerites, under the first and second angel's messages that are developed in this parable of the 10 virgins. And then when we get to our history, the first and second angel's messages are repeated. And they're repeated because the parable of the 10 virgins is being repeated, right? Because in order for the third angel's message to be completed, the second angel joins it. But you can't have a second without a first, and you can't have a third without a first and a second, correct?
Right.
So in our history, when Ellen White talks about this second angel joining, that means the first angel must have already come before that. And the reason why the second angel joins is because the Seventh-day Adventist Church has an opportunity to receive some light that they fail to receive, just like the Protestants failed to receive the light here.
Just like the Jews, the leadership of the Jews refused to receive the light there.
Right. So when you get to 9/11, the leadership is completely passed by. Same at the time of Christ. When he's baptized, the leadership has been passed by. They were passed by at his birth. They were passed by when he was 12 years old. But they were also passed by at his baptism. And now Christ begins his ministry when the second angel arrives. And in Millerite history, now the Millerites are this group. So Christ's ministry here that begins is connected with his disciples, but it's also connected with him preaching the gospel and bringing people to become Christians, right? So it's really the beginning of Christianity happens at the baptism of Christ, because now he begins his ministry. And there's a lot of things in there, you know, in the story of Christ. The problem with the line of Christ is it has so many different levels and so many different lines within it that are stories or parables that are acted out in the life of Christ, acted out in the life of the disciples, that it's just jam-packed with all this information. And you can look at it on different levels. But what I do is I take the disciples and I line them up with our line, the line of the priests. I line them up with Ezekiel, and I line them up with snow. And I'm not going to go into that. This isn't the most important thing here because you just asked the question.
I am asking you a question.
Okay, what's the question, Mark?
Where I am be a line up with the under lost.
I don't know where you line up because you're not a Levite or a priest because you're not a Seventh-day Adventist. So you would be a Nethinim. You would be a Protestant. But we'll come back to that later, Mark.
Sure.
So, there. Now, when I look at, so let's just move away from this for a minute, and let's go back to Millerite history. So in Millerite history, we have Samuel Snow, and Snow is going to be after August 11th, 1840, and before April 19th, that he's going to have these series of letters. So we dealt with this before. So this is Snow's letters, and his letters end 3 days before midnight on July 18th. And I said that in our line, we have a parallel to Snow's letters. And what I did, for somebody watching this for the first time, I showed that 9/11 lines up with August 11th, 1840. And it also lines up with April 19th, 1844. In our line, they are not one-way mark, they're two-way marks. But we know that we have a line of the priests that's going to end on July 18th. Now, we could even say this is FFA. There's lots of ways we could describe it, but I'll just call it the line of the priests. And the line of the priests ends before midnight. And I've argued that, like Snow's letters are the prediction before midnight in Millerite history. Maybe the best way to describe this would be say this is the prediction before midnight. It exists. Snow is the one who makes the prediction before midnight. The priests make the prediction before midnight. Now I'm starting it here after 9/11 or before 9/11, but it's really, we know that there is two ways that we can look at 9/11 in our history. It's not just that they are one-way mark because there is one event, but we can look at 9/11 as being here, or we can look at 9/11 as being here. And in this case, I can take Snow's letters, which begin before the first day of the first month, and I can look at the PBM as beginning before 9/11, or really after August 11th, 1840. It's not so much that it's before 9/11, because it's not, because it's after 9/11. But it's 9/11 as this symbol, not 9/11 as this symbol. But we also know that the second angel's message arrives. And so in our line, we have this arrival of the second angel's message, and it happens because the church has rejected this light. And we are then going to have this movement, which is our movement, studying and understanding truth. But Seventh-day Adventists have been studying since 9/11. They're called Levites. So when we talk about Levites, we're talking about people who are just Seventh-day Adventists. We're talking about a certain group of people who are actually interested in light. So these Levites are like the Millerites. They're students of Scripture. And so We now came to July 18th, and we're wondering why our message isn't empowered. But our message is not empowered as a prediction before midnight. Now, another way to illustrate this, what is it that's particularly interesting about Ezekiel and how he does his prophesying? What is the thing that Ezekiel does that is characteristic of Ezekiel? I know that's kind of a broad question.
That's hugely broad.
Yeah, but when we talk about Ezekiel, whenever I've seen videos on Ezekiel, they always talk about his acted out parables, that he becomes a sign.
So by acting out the parables, he's becoming part of the parable?
Yeah, he is the parable. He does things like lies on his left side and then on his right side. He takes his possessions, bundles them up, digs a hole in the wall of his house and crawls out at sunset, right? Things like that. So Ezekiel is doing these acted out parables, and even the death of his wife becomes an acted out parable. He also becomes dumb, which is an acted out parable. So he has all these things that happen to him personally that are illustrating something that's going to happen in the future. And this is the characteristic that I think we have not understood about our movement, is that we looked at the PBM as sort of some message that we just have, but it's actually a message that we are. That is, we experience something that becomes that message, just like Snow's letters as well. If you look at Snow's letters, the thing about them is they're all typical. He has no idea this is happening. When he's writing those letters and when they're published, all are symbolic of this separation that we actually applied to the disciples' separation, the Passovers, midnight. These are symbols that we applied to the separation from Judas and the other disciples. And we can look at Millerite history and we can look at Snow's letters and see that they illustrate something that's going to be in the future, that's actually going to occur under this midnight cry Sunday law symbolism in Millerite history, and also going to occur in our history. So when we look at this prediction before midnight, to me, we were looking at it wrong. That is, we didn't realize it was our experience that was illustrating what's going to happen. And one example I used of that was what happened with the new movement. The new movement illustrated what was going to happen to Seventh-day Adventists, that we would see conservative Adventists turn to the world almost overnight by being beguiled. And that the same thing is happening now to Seventh-day Adventists. We're following in the steps of what happened in this movement. And so everything that happened in this movement that were kind of questioning, was God leading this movement? Well, we can look at what happened and we can say, definitely God led. But the question is, what does this all mean? And I think the way that we can understand it is by placing it on this line properly. Now, I skipped a bunch just because I sort of had to. But we had the development of this line, where we brought out this was in 2016, where we had the first day of the first month, the fifth day of the fourth month, the first day of the fifth month, and the 10th day of the seventh month. And then, so in 2016, we had that. And in 2017, we then understood Samuel Snow's letters. Now, there's this discussion going on regarding Samuel Snow's letters and the prediction before midnight. And I don't think, and I'm not saying this disparagingly, but many people don't really understand what we mean by that July 18th is the prediction before midnight and that it parallels Snow's letters. And partly is because we don't fully understand Snow's letters, even though it's been presented. Much of what was connected with Snow's letters wasn't really accepted in the movement in a general sense. And also the prediction before midnight wasn't well understood within the movement. So when we bring up these two illustrations, the thing that we can say about both of them is they both end on July 18th. One is 1844, the other one's 2020. But they are types. They're typical of what's going to happen. Snow's letters themselves are not really seen. They're not manifested. Nobody even really knew about them until 2017. Nobody understood anything about their structure, anything about their dates or what they meant. And if you read things that were written by Adventist scholars on Snow's letters, they often get the dates wrong. They're just not particular enough about Snow's letters because there's no light there for them at that time. They don't have the context in which to understand the importance of Snow's letters. But we did, because we came to understand Millerite history in great detail. So it's in this history that we're understanding Millerite history. And we're also understanding, like Snow was understanding, that the events that that the people were looking to, Jesus coming back at the end of Miller's prophecy, Snow's letters contain within them the information to tell us that that's going to be delayed. Our prediction before midnight has within us. Yeah.
That is very wrong.
No, it's not wrong, Mark.
Yes, it is. That is wrong. You forgot that Christ is coming second time.
Yeah.
I saw in the movie, Jesus movie,
yeah.
Christ is a sky, as a sky of himself, a baby. I don't know, he is down here.
Okay, so Christ is in heaven. He came the first time.
No. He was be a sky of a baby. As don't know, he is here. He's a sky. The skies of his a baby is going up.
Yeah, but we're talking about something else. Mark.
The sky of himself, it get bigger and bigger. He leave, he come back. Second time, he be full.
Right, we understand that, Mark, but we're not talking about that right now. We're not talking about that, okay?
Back, teach us.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that at the moment. So we're talking about people who believed that Jesus was going to come back on October 22nd. But that was wrong. Jesus didn't come back in 1844. So the point that I'm making here, though, regarding the prediction before midnight in Snow's letters, is that they're typical in nature. And however you want to characterize this, I like the term the prediction before midnight, but you could say that this is the priest's experience up to July 18th is typical of what's going to happen. And we had within this waymarks in our lines that we experienced that are going to parallel midnight and the midnight cry and the Sunday law. And so we now can look at this line of the Levites and see that midnight and the midnight cry are still future. So part of the problem is we had done this with the lines. We had taken the line of the priests, and then we had taken the line of the Levites, and we had just marked their waymarks one waymark later than ours. Basically, that was kind of done. There's some fidgeting that was done with it as well. And we did that with the Nethinim. And then we also said that that was the same as the line of the world. So the 144,000. And I believe that this was a wrong application. We were right in recognizing that there are different lines, but this was just an assumption that was made that each of the waymarks in our line are going to be staggered like this. And what we see is that the line of the priests actually precedes the line of midnight, or the waymark of midnight, in the line of the Levites. And we know that because we know Raphia and Peniam have not occurred. And we know that Raphia, is supposed to occur at midnight, and Paneum is supposed to occur at the midnight cry. And we thought that this was November 9th and July 18th, but we can see that that's not the case, that there's still future. Now, if we're going to go back to the foundation of this message, as some people suggest, the question is, how far back do you go? Do you reject Raphi and Paneum? Do you reject the idea of 9/11, midnight cry, and the Sunday law? Do you reject Samuel Snow's letters as having any significance? Is it just some bizarre coincidence? And I showed on Wednesday how Snow's letters were connected with the July 18th prediction before we even had Josiah Litch's prophecy, that we found a structure in Snow's letters that paralleled the structure in our own line. And so we could definitely connect Snow's letters to our line. Now, just to illustrate this again, in Snow's letters, we really need to look at Snow's letters again in this context. But we know his last letter is July 18th. And we could take his letters and we can do this with them. We can go, his first letter, I'm just going to do it this way. It's February, we'll go 16th day, second month, right? We could have done it the other way around. I won't even do it that way. I'll just do it his first letter, and it's going to be published and then republished. And then we're going to have the first day of the first month. And then we're going to have his second letter. And then we're going to have his third letter. So you're going to have his second, and then you're going to have his third. And this is the fourth. And then in our history, we had these dates that lined up here with this. And this would have been, we'll do it here. We'll go June 9th. And then we're going to have June 15th. And then we're going to have August 11th. And then we're going to have August 11th, Julian. So some people may not know what I'm talking about. And this is October 13th. And then, did I do this right? I might have left something out. Oh, I did. Never mind. This is October 13th. And this is November 9th. And this should have been July 27th. This would have been August 11th. And this would be August 11th. Okay. So I know this is kind of messy, but these were waymarks that occurred in our line. Now, not everything had a date attached to it, that is an event attached to the date. But we ended up with this structure. This was a structure of 126 days. And it was divided in the middle of 63 days and 63 days. And then we had 391 and a half days. And if you go from this June 22nd letter, June 22, and you count 391 and a half, you come to July 18th. Now, of course, there's only 26 days in between these two dates in Millerite history. But if you add an extra year, you can get this symbolism. The point is, this part lined up with Samuel Snow's letters into the timing of these waymarks lined up with Snow's letters. So that this means that this part of this message was connected to Samuel Snow's letters. But the last letter is July 18th. Now, we are lining these up here, but I'm just saying that this July 18th lines up with this structure of 777 days, with July 18th in it. So I know it's a lot of information, but we should know these things. The point being made is that we can see that July 18th wasn't something that was manufactured by a bunch of math. It was by understanding Millerite history. And so when we look at Snow's letters, this is something that is easy to see. It's something that couldn't occur by chance. It has to be God's design. we can look at our prediction before midnight and say that all that stuff that I had here that I can put into this history is also connected to Snow's letters. Further than that, we know then that Raphi and Peniam are future. And we can line the Levites up with the Millerites. Now, regarding the parable of the 10 virgins, Ellen White says the parable of the 10 virgins was fulfilled under which history? What we read earlier. What was the history? What is this history? It's the history of the first and second angel's message. And if we look at this history here, what is this history that we're in right now? It's the parable of the 10 virgins, and it's the first and second angel's messages. But these have joined the third. So if we go up here, we can take all of this history from 1989 to the Sunday law, and that's this history here placed up here. And so who is this group that's being tested here under this history? We had it here. We have Seventh-day Adventists and Levites. Who are these people? They're all Seventh-day Adventists. But we can divide them. We can put 9/11 here. But we can still say this is all SDAs. It's just SDAs in two different phases. The church, you know, if you want to put it that way, the organization, and then the Levites, which is a group of the priests. But then when we're going to look at this group here, the priests, they are not some separate line that lines up in a staggered way with the Levites. The Levites and the priests, they have similarities in their lines because Snow's letters are typifying this whole line. The prediction before midnight is typifying this whole line. So we can then say that the priest, the line of the priest lines up like this. It might be kind of small for people to see, but I jammed all this stuff here. So the line of the priests is connected to the church and the Levites. Now, more specifically, we have this line, which I'm calling the PBM or the priests. But we know that Samuel Snow doesn't just have his letters. He's also going to be here at Boston. And he's going to be here at Exeter. And when he's at Boston and Exeter, he's there giving a message. The priests have this experience, the prediction before midnight. But are the priests going to be here at Raphi and Peniam giving a message? Are the priests going to be there? More specifically, if the priests are here, what message are they giving? What message was Snow giving at Boston and Exeter? He was giving the message of his letters, right? This message that was developed here. What message are the priests going to give at Raphi and Peniam? I need somebody to answer. What message are they giving?
Midnight cry.
They're giving this message. The message that they had here is the message they give here, right? Snow's letters, he has a message that he developed, but he gives that message at Boston and Exeter. In the prediction before midnight, the priests are going to give a message at Raphi and Peniam. Now, who does Snow give his message to?
Millerites.
He gives them to Millerites. Who do we give our message to?
Night of cry.
The Levites?
We give it to the Levites. at the midnight and the midnight cry. So our message that we have developed, that we've just experienced, just like Ezekiel, it's an acted out parable. Just like Snow's letters are an acted out parable. They contain symbolically the events that are going to follow. Our experience contains the events that are going to follow. And we then have to give these messages here at Raphi and Peniam to the Levites. So that means we have a work to do. Now, right now, we have gone through this experience of studying. In Millerite history, what has happened in Snow's history from when he began writing his letters to the time he gives the midnight cry at Boston? What's happened in Adventism? Now, Snow is an individual, right? So one of the things that's hard to see here, because we know we're not looking for an individual in our history. There isn't a person who is Snow. But we have Snow as an individual here, and we have his letters. And then we have the priests here, and we have their experience. And in this history, one of the things that is illustrated in Samuel Snow's letters, not that Samuel Snow experienced it, but that his letters demonstrate it, is that these letters are published on the true Passover and the false Passover. His letters illustrate this division between two groups. And he also has a letter that's written on Pentecost. And if we look at this history, we can see what we experienced in our movement was typified by Snow's letters. We saw this separation of two classes that occurred. And we also saw Pentecost. True organization occurred in this movement. And we didn't see it because we were looking for a human organization. But God took over this movement. And I believe that he did that in 2017. We just didn't know it. God took over this movement. He took over all the light that we received, that was true light, came in 2007, began to come in 2017. And that light from 2017 onward was rejected by the new movement. So that separation that occurred symbolically in Snow's letters occurred also in our history. So July 18th, the people who come out on this side of July 18th, they're the Levites. They're the wise virgins. And they have this opportunity to give this message. And they're going to be accomplishing this work typically that actually occurs in reality in history. So we were expecting an actual event on July 18th, but if we had understood Millerite history and how it parallels ours, we shouldn't have expected an event, but of course we had to. Now, some people have heard that I've said that July 18th parallels October 22nd. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about typically. That is, in Snow's letters, we have a typical representation of this line. And July 18th typifies the 10th day of the 7th month. Why does July 18th typify the 10th day of the 7th month? Anybody?
Disappointment.
Okay, but we know what is the 10th day of the 7th month. What day of the year is it?
2020.
It's the 187th day of the year, the 10th day of the 7th month. And July 18th represents 187. We also know that if we add up the first day of the first month, 5th day of the 4th month, 1st day of the 5th month, and the 10th day of the 7th month, they also add up to 187 if we just take these as numbers. So we know that July 18th typifies what's going to happen. This July 18th typifies what's going to happen on October 22nd, 1844. Snow's letters do that. our movement is paralleling Snow's letters, this part of it. But Snow still has a message to give, and we have a message to give. If we don't understand the typical nature of this movement, we can be discouraged because we would think that we were wrong, and we were wrong. There's no doubt we were wrong about Nashville as being an event marked on July 18th. What we didn't realize is that this is typifying what's going to happen in the future. And that to me is the part that we have to understand, because we have a choice. Either all of this was a delusion, and if it was, you have to decide where that delusion began. And if it was a delusion and you have to decide that, the only way that you can do that is by studying. And we have to study as individuals. So there's no doubt that we have an individual work to do. But we also have to study together as priests, people in this movement. And we have to give each other that opportunity to be heard. And we have to look at the possibilities. I'm not saying I'm right about this. I might be partly right and partly wrong. There might be some things that I don't see, but it has to be studied. As we're studying through Ezekiel, we're finding so many things in Ezekiel that show that this movement is Ezekiel, and that we can parallel Ezekiel's history with ours. So it doesn't make sense to me to just deny July 18th, because in doing so, we have to deny all of the information that led to July 18th. We would have to say the study in Josiah Litch's prophecy, all those connections that we saw between the 26th day of the fourth month and July 27 are just coincidences. We'd have to go to Ezekiel and have to question almost everything we learned about Ezekiel as being insignificant, that really Ezekiel is not about this movement and it's just a devotional book. You know, because everything we found in Ezekiel is extremely profound, but it's only profound if God was leading this movement. We have to look at all of our history that we've gone through. We have to look at the story of Jacob and Joseph and the structural chiasms. We have to look at the 2520. We have to look at the story of Ezra and the structural chiasms in there that parallel Millerite history and Snow's letters. So if we are going to say that we were deluded in some way, we actually have to have an answer to show where that occurred. So far, people are making a suggestion because the event did not occur as predicted, that means we were wrong about the dates and about the numbers and about the chronology. You know, if that's the case, then we need to show how that happened. To me, it's not just enough to say the event didn't occur, so that means everything that we did before must have been wrong. Because if we look at what was done before, it wasn't actually done in connection with time setting at all. All of the work that was done in understanding the 2520, in understanding Samuel Snow's letters, in understanding Millerite history, in understanding the story of Ezra and the 2300 days, and the story of Jacob and Joseph and Abraham, all of these structural chiasms were all figured out before we had any indication of time setting. And they were totally unconnected with anything Parminder was teaching, so much so that Parminder actually rejected all of that light. So we know that Parminder was false, but he also opposed July 18th. And some of the people who are trying to say we were wrong about July 18th are followers of Parminder's. They want us to be divided. There are people that have come into our group and they're secretly following Parminder. Some of them I know are following Parminder and trying to point out that we were wrong. They're trying to act like they're still part of us, but they actually have no interest in this movement. Now, some of them aren't full followers of Parminder. Some of them believe that Parminder's teaching some truth. Some of them are just followers of themselves. That is, they think they have special light and that people need to listen to them. And my view is that we don't need some individual. We need, as a group, to understand these truths. It's not enough for me to say, I understand something. We are all God's people. We are all priests. We are all part of this group. God has to demonstrate this to us. He has to show us. Now, we need to look at the options that we have, but we have to look at them openly and honestly. And we can't be blaming one another for the mistakes that we all made, because we all made mistakes. I made mistakes as much as anyone else. But we have to know which ones are mistakes and which ones are God's leading. What is it that we did not understand that God wanted to teach us? And what is it that God was actually showing us? I have a hard time accepting the idea that we were all just under a delusion, because we would all be under that delusion. And I don't see that in any of these lines, that you have God's people under a delusion and then they have to turn and go back. In the place where we have placed ourselves on these lines, we have no such example. Some people have used, well, the Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, but that's in a different waymark. It's in a different line. It's not in the place that we are at in our lines. We're after 9/11. We're after the arrival of the second angel's message. We're in the testing time of the second angel's message. You can't put that as the Israelites wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. And other places where people have tried to apply these things, it just doesn't make sense. So if these lines are true, and if God has been leading us at all, we have to be able to show where we made our mistake and why we made that mistake. And we have to also believe that God allowed that mistake for a purpose. I think that in this illustration of these lines, which I didn't do as good a job as I would have liked to in presenting them, we can see clearly that we have the first and second angel's message is the parable of the 10 virgins. And then the third angel arrives. And under the third angel, Ellen White is telling us that the parable of the 10 virgins will be fulfilled again to the very letter. And she shows that it was fulfilled under the first and second angel's messages, and it will again be fulfilled under the first and second angel's messages. And we know then when we get to the Sunday law, if we're going to align it up with October 22nd, 1844, we would have to have something occurring here that parallels the arrival of the third angel in 1844. And I would say that it's the empowerment of the third angel that happens at the Sunday law, because the third angel's message is about the Sabbath. So I would put the third angel as empowered here. In our history, in all of the lines that have existed, they all end with the third angel arriving. And then they have a fourth, but in that fourth, they always have a falling away. That is, the third angel never gets empowered. In our history is the first time that we will see the empowerment of the third message, or the third angel's message. Never has happened before. And this is what ends history. This is what allows this message to be given with power to the world. And so we see there's a lot of work to be done. We were not ready to have that test being thrown upon, that burden of responsibility thrown upon us. We're unprepared, but we have typified what we need to do to be prepared. In these events that follow, God is giving us this light so that we can be strengthened by these events, because we will see what these events are. Without this message, we wouldn't know what these events are that are going to occur. We wouldn't have a context in which to place them, but now we do. And then we'll be able to give that to Adventists so that they can stand at the Sunday law, because this is a test that's unlike any other. To be able to stand at the Sunday law, we are not prepared. God has to bring us through this testing message to prepare us. And then we can stand at the Sunday law. But more importantly, then we can be lifted up as an ensign. And then we can give that message to the world. Our line only typified that. Just like Snow's letters typified that. Any questions on this? Something that's not clear?
I am saying I say about midnight and night of quiet.
Yes, okay. So anyone else?
Hey,
Hey, Mark, I'll have to talk to you about it later.
No,
we
you're
specifically deal with this.
No, you're not giving me a chance to say something.
Okay, say something.
I know about midnight at night cry.
Yeah.
It is destiny. Destiny is inside the night of cry.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else with questions, things that aren't clear that you want clarified?
So far, I think you're doing a good job with a difficult subject.
Okay, so is there anything that you want to clarify that you think that I didn't, that isn't clear here, or that might be unclear in other people's minds?
At this point, no, because a lot of what you're putting up here, Ezekiel would call it the wheels within wheels.
Right, yeah.
And I'm seeing that a lot of these lines, just like what we started to talk about with the line of Christ, they add information and examples. One line adds a little bit more to the next line, to the next, to the next.
Okay. And one thing I see with what happened with, especially with what Parminder was doing with the lines, is it was just creating confusion. Now, some people may say that about the chronology I was doing. But the thing is, there's quite a bit of difference. First off, the lines that we had in our history, we couldn't line them up with Millerite history. That is, what we did is we took Millerite history and we just said, this is a pattern, and that this pattern happens for the priests, the Levites, the Nethinim, 144,000. That's the way we did it. And then we staggered them like I showed. But we don't actually see that in Millerite history. We see Snow's letters as this special case, but we see these two groups. Now, part of the reason is I've always seen the Nethinim as Protestants who join with us. That is, in Millerite history, Protestants fall away. But in our history, some Protestants join with Seventh-day Adventists to stand at the Sunday law. And this happens at the image of the beast test. So I never had a line of the Nethinims. I didn't believe that that line exists, for one thing. So I've never accepted that line. But when it came to the priests and the Levites, again, I couldn't, without this idea that we have here, I couldn't see how we could put the priests and the Levites in this history. You couldn't say this is the priests and this is the Levites. Because the priests and the Levites, their line is different than this whole big line. So the only way that I could see it is by looking at this being Protestants, the Protestants grouped as Millerites, Protestants and Millerites, and as ours, Seventh-day Adventists, but two aspects. The Adventists who have rejected light and the Adventists who are going to accept light. That is, these are students. Now, of course, they're still going to be tested. They have to stand at the Sunday law. The Millerites have to be tested too. They have to stand at October 22nd and beyond in order to give a message. But in this history, we failed of doing that. I have all these quotes. Don't have time to read them, where Ellen White talks about this. But we can see here now, we can explain our experience by something that God gave us in 2017, Snow's letters, which at the time I was trying to show that was paralleling our movement. But I can see that Snow's letters don't go all the way to October 22nd, 1844. Now Snow does, but his letters don't. So his letters must represent something. And we said it was the PBM, but then that was abandoned. But now I'm saying that because all of the symbolism shows that the PBM is Snow's letters, it helps us understand our experience. It explains what we went through. It shows that it's of God, but we were mistaken, just like the Millerites with October 22nd, 1844, about the event. Now, Snow's letters are typifying this whole line. We typify this whole line. And that's my point. And I think that's simple. It should be simple enough to understand. It gets rid of a lot of the complexity that we had. Now, there's still obviously questions that people would have about this. And that's what I want to know. I mean, I want to put this on the Alpha group, the Alpha chat, not as the authoritative interpretation of how we should understand what happened, but I want to know how people see this. I want to know what problems people have with it or what things I'm missing, because that's what we need to do as a movement is we have to study, and we have to study using Miller's methods, recognizing that we're fallible human beings, recognizing that God is the one in charge, and that we have to be individually studying and also studying as a group. This is what the Millerites did in their experience. So this is where we are at. And that's my understanding of that.
So Theodore?
Yeah.
If you have the PBM arriving before 9/11, how do you explain that?
Well, the way that I explained it is that...
Hold on.
Yeah.
I understand that Snow's letters come before, you know, the first letter comes before April 19. And so it would be before the second angel arrives. And so that's why you're putting it there. But in reality, in our experience, it didn't actually, we didn't have a PBM before 9/11.
Okay, so that's not what I'm doing actually. I know that's because we've had this conversation before. So what I'm saying is when it comes to the line of the priest, this PBM, we have 9/11 represent two different waymarks in Millerite history. In our history, it's one waymark, but it represents two. And in the context of the PBM, we are using the empowerment of the first angel, 9/11, as the basis for understanding the PBM. That is, it occurs after the empowerment of the first angel. Right? Now, we could also argue it occurs after the arrival of the second angel, but the arrival of the second angel is in the line of the Levites. That is, in the line of the Levites, we have, because the Levites is a bigger line than ours. So in the line of the Levites, the second angel arriving at 9/11 has already occurred at 9/11. But in the line of the prediction before midnight, we haven't had that separation yet occur within the priests itself, because the arrival of the second angel is the separation that happens between these two groups. So if you look up at Snow's letters, it's not so much that Snow's letters, you know, happen to fall between the start of them between August 11th, 1840 and April 19th. It's the significance of what April 19th is. It's division between two groups. Now, Snow doesn't have that. He's not divided amongst himself.
Why not?
But he's typifying, his letters are typifying the division that occurs in our history. And so 9/11 has only one place in our line, obviously, because it's an event. But it depends on the perspective that I'm looking at. So in the perspective of the line of the Levites, 9/11 is the second angel's arriving. But in the context of the prediction before midnight, 9/11 is understood in the context of occurring as the empowerment of the first angel. Now they're combined in our line of the Levites, but they're not combined in the prediction before midnight. In the prediction before midnight, they're two separate things. Now, the only way that I can say this without being misunderstood is if I go to this line, something happened in our message which Parminder rejected, and that something was a thing called sunset. And I would argue that if you look at the hour line in our movement, sunset was 2014. And sunset is not 9/11 as an event, right? So sunset is 2014 as an event. And sunset lines up with April 19th, that separation that happens between these two groups. This idea of sunset was very profound, but because there was not this understanding of Millerite history correctly, that when we looked at it, we thought it was a rejection of 9/11 as the arrival of the second angel. But this is still 9/11 as the arrival of the second angel. But in the context of the prediction before midnight, it's 2014 that's sunset. 9/11 is sunset. And the reason we know it's sunset, because in Millerite history, if it lines up with April 19th, and this is midnight, according to Snow, he says, this is sunset because this is midnight and this is the night. This whole thing is the night, right? Because he says, how long is the night? It's 6 months. And how long to midnight? 3 months. And how long has it been since we've been in the tarrying time? Just 3 months. So he is indirectly saying that this must be sunset. So we know when we look at our line, 9/11 can be represented as sunset in the context of this. So in the context of the Levites, 9/11 is sunset. But in the context of the prediction before midnight, sunset is 2014. And the 9/11 that we're referencing in this context is this experience here in the empowerment of the first angel. Because in this history here, under the priests and Levites, the second angel hasn't really arrived in the context of this message itself as a type. Because this is a type. This is a type. And so in this type, you can't have this type beginning before the arrival of the second angel. It wouldn't be a correct type. So that's the way that I address that. Now, people could say, well, we rejected sunset, but we didn't really reject sunset because we didn't even understand what we were talking about. Hardly anybody knew what sunset was about. What we did reject is the idea that Chawatu was Samuel Snow, because that's what he wanted, the belief that he was Samuel Snow.
Snow.
And he was also misrepresented. So he is also misrepresented, just as other people have been misrepresented. I'm not saying that he was correct in everything, but we have to be careful when we look at something like sunset as being part of this prediction before midnight. This fits that context. But in the line of the Levites, sunset is 9/11, not 2014. I hope that makes sense to people. If that doesn't, maybe there's something in my thinking that's not right. But this I actually understood back in 2000 and in 2017. So I actually had accepted sunset on one level. That is, I understood it was 2014 was sunset, because I looked at 2014 as May 2nd, as the center of the prediction before midnight. But I wasn't accepting the idea that we could just then say the second angel didn't arrive at 9/11, that it arrived at 2014. There's no doubt that the second angel arrived at 9/11. Does that help, Larry?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I tell you what I struggle, and I struggle, whatever, however you want to say it. I don't know if struggle is the right word. When we split 9/11 like you have it.
Which I didn't. I didn't split 9/11. Don't get me wrong. 9/11 is not split. I'm saying that in Millerite history, there are two different events that in our history 9/11 represents, right? So I never split 9/11. Just because I draw them in two different spots, I do not split 9/11. All I am saying,
I don't understand how you can say you put them in two different spots and they're not
I
split.
put them in two different spots on the board, but they're one event. There is only 9/11.
Right.
9/11 is the empowerment of the first angel, and it's the arrival of the second angel. That occurs at 9/11. It doesn't occur in two spots. I had to draw it on the line because above, in Millerite history, it's representing two different events, right? So
no, in Millerite history, it's clearly the two events.
Right. Okay.
But when we bring it down to our line, we always had one way mark, not two.
And we do. We have one way mark. It's 9/11. I haven't changed that. I just drew it in two places.
Right.
So don't be confused by the fact.
And I'm just trying to tell you what my struggle is.
Yeah.
And my struggle is you have two lines. That's two way marks. It should be one way mark.
But it's not two way marks. Just because I write it twice.
I understand you have
two-way marks.
I understand that you have 9/11 written there.
Yeah.
Twice. And so you're saying it's 9/11, right? It's just
it's one event.
Yeah. I understand that you're saying that, but what I'm seeing in addition to that is that there are two lines there, which makes it split in some sense. It's split. It's
split in Millerite history. It's not split in our history.
Okay, so then why don't we just have one line?
Well, we do. But the thing is, I have to illustrate it that way to show that if you're going to address the PBM, which is the prediction before midnight, the events that we went through, we would have to say that we have a waymark where the second angel arrives. Because the arrival of the second angel, I don't know if you saw the first part of this, but the first part of the reason why the second angel arrived is that the Protestants had rejected the first angel's message. That allowed for the second angel to arrive. Correct?
Yeah, in May, they reject the charts, right?
And in our history, the second angel arrives at 9/11 because why? Who rejects the first angel's message?
Well, if you're talking about nominal Adventism,
right? Yeah, the organized church, Seventh-day Adventists, the leadership, the structure, whatever you want to call it, they reject the first angel's message. That's why the second angel arrives. Now, in the context of the line of the priests, when do we have a symbol that is in our movement itself that the first angel is rejected? When is the first angel rejected in the line of the priests itself? Because we're a typical line, right? So in the line of the priests, the second angel arrives symbolically where? Where do we have a division in the line of the priests?
I'm assuming you're referring to 2014 when you're talking about
right. So 2014 in the line of the priests is typifying what happens on the big line at 9/11. Right?
I mean, I sort of.
Because it's a separation between, okay, in Snow's letters, where does the separation between the two groups occur? April 19th, right? And it's separated by
the first disappointment, right? Yeah.
Right. And it's separated by a false Passover, which is April 3rd on the left side, right? And then the true Passover, which is May 2nd on the right side. And the Passover shows the separation of the disciples, right? Because Judas was separated from the disciples at the Passover.
Okay.
Right? And so we understood that in 2017. The Passover was we were talking about midnight. We were talking about Judas and his betrayal at midnight, all these things that happened at midnight. And we could see that that was connected with the Passover. So in 2017, we understood that 2014 had been the beginning of this separation. We actually understood that a bit earlier, but we understood it in the context that this was this event. And the prediction before midnight, the one that Tabo chose was May 2nd. And May 2nd was the true Passover. And it was the center of a chiasm. And what we did is we lined up May 2nd with 2014. I don't know if you remember that. People lining up May 2nd in Snow's letters with 2014.
So I'll say that when all that was going on, so I was there in 2014 with the Path of the Just and the split that happened.
Not me.
Yeah, but in 2017,
right,
we came to understand that May 2nd lined up with 2014. Do you remember that?
So I didn't study sunset as much as other things that were going on at that time. And so,
yeah, but not sunset, just the prediction before midnight.
Yeah. So that was all happening at the same time. And I was having some issues with some of the things. And so I step away usually if I'm having issues. I kind of stepped away from those things for a little bit to kind of try and get my bearings about what was going on. And so I did not look at those things in detail. Now, I'll say this too, on 2014, if you look at what was going on, the split actually begins to happen in 2013.
Yes, I know, but it actually occurs in 2014.
Right, it begins.
I understood it. Yeah, that's when nobody knew about it in the movement basically until 2014. But yeah, it was already occurring in 2010 even, if you look back, because I came in 2010 and you could see it already beginning. But it manifested itself in 2014. But this is what Tabo said. Prediction before midnight is May 2nd. Right? That's what he taught.
Yeah, I don't know that. I never heard him say that. I don't know.
Well, he did. He clearly taught that in the papers I have of his. That's what he taught. And then many people came to recognize that this was 2014. So they lined these things up. But I came to recognize that this was the center of a chiasm, and that chiasm had May 2nd as the center, because that was also a chiasm, because that's the chiasm of the Christ, that on May 2nd letter, that's what Samuel Snow is addressing. But it's also the exact center of his February 16th letter and his July 18th letter, right? So May 2nd was the center of that. And so I said that May 2nd is the center of this chiasm that ends in July 18th. Now, a whole bunch of crazy things were happening in the movement in 2017. We had this introduction of the nature of man that was false. We had a rejection of the PBM by Parminder, but not outwardly, right? He just basically brushed it aside.
I remember now, in 2017, what I was focused on was Parminder's failed prediction of 2014 being the National Sunday Law. And I kept coming back to that issue because that's a major issue for me. It was and still is a major issue. And so,
and of course, his idea was ridiculous. I mean, it makes no sense at all that it's a Sunday law.
Well, I mean, whether it made sense or not, it was accepted.
Yeah, not by me, but by lots of people.
I'm saying in the movement, it was accepted. And I kept coming back and saying nothing happened. And so I went and found the actual lectures that he gave in 2012, where he explains it all. And so that's what I was doing in 2017. I was trying to understand why we were accepting this thing that he was saying, well, something happened, let's go find it.
Right.
Anyway, so that's why I wasn't as focused on, I was trying to think about why was I not listening to this?
Because but anyway, but the point that you can see that I'm saying here is in regards to 2014, it is the way mark that we use to mark the separation. It's the first time we have an open rebellion against Jeff and FFA within the movement. We had a hidden rebellion that had been going on behind the scenes, but it becomes manifest in 2014 with Jamal's letter. And then those people actually separate from us, because until 2014, they're not separated from us. They're still at our camp meetings, right?
Yeah, they were arguing over Joel. Yeah.
Right. But the point is, so the separation happens in 2014. Now, I accept 2014 as part of the structure for very good reasons, not for the reasons Parminder gave as far as the significance of it, but I think it also parallels 1888 because 1888 is a division, right?
Sure.
So it's a split. And so 2014 is that. My point is that when it comes to the prediction before midnight, the split within the priest itself that parallels the split that happens between between SDAs and Levites, or in Miller's history, Protestants and Millerites, that doesn't occur at 9/11 because we don't even have the movement of the priests. We just have Jeff. Well, once we get this movement going, we have our first division that parallels or typifies it, because what happened in 2014 typifies what happens in April 19th. It typifies what happens at 9/11, right? So so it's not that we move sunset to 2014. We can see that sunset is actually 9/11, but in our movement, sunset occurs in 2014, and because it's a separate line altogether. So remember how we used to take this line and we would just take the line of the priest goes way back here, and then you've got the line of the Levites, and the line of the Nephilim. That's not really how fractals work. What we have with this,
I always had issues with that as well. Like
what we have here is this is a fractal of this whole line, right? Snow's letters is a fractal of this whole line.
So then if you're saying that, then you're saying 2014 is 9/11 in that sense. And
it symbolizes 9/11. Yes.
And so the first line is going to be 1989 then?
No. Well, if you want to put it here, yes, you would say 1989, the time of the end, wherever you want to place this. But that's not the
fractal. I'm saying if that's a fractal of the whole line,
right,
then that would have to be 1989, right?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. You know, Snow's letter starts here after August 11th, right?
Yeah.
But he's still going to typify this whole thing. In his letters, it's typifying this whole message. The PBM is typifying this whole message. So you don't necessarily have to find some event in our line per se that we can say that's the time of the end. We might try to say it's 2004 when we find the 2520 and all this stuff happens. Whichever year that was, we found the 2520. You could say the first camp meetings that Jeff had, which were 2004. However you want to look at it. It's not that important because that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to take the PBM and then define every little element of it. What we can see is that overall, it typifies this. And we also have very specific waymarks within this line that we can line up with Snow's letters, showing that Snow's letters typify this. Now, when I say Snow's letters, we always start with February 16th, but actually Snow has letters that go way back to 1842, his first letter. Now, they're not part of this particular structure here, but they're still significant. The context is of those letters is significant, the content. And we can see also here in this movement, because this is what Jeff said, is he said, well, we actually, if we're going to take Snow's letters and we're going to put them in our line, we have to put them before 9/11 starting. This is what Jeff told me. He said, they don't start after 9/11, they start before 9/11 because Snow's letters start before April 19th. And I never had a solution to that.
And I think that makes sense.
Yes. But
my question though is if we didn't actually have a prediction before midnight, if we didn't have some idea about this before 9/11, then that doesn't work. And so,
yeah, but we do have after this 9/11. So we obviously exist after 9/11. That's what I'm trying to say. We exist after 9/11, but as far as the symbols within our own line, right? Mm-hmm. As far as the symbols within our own line, the division happens in 2014, And that's the part of our line that is typifying 9/11. Not because this is not the big line, right? This is a special case. Snow's letters are a special case. Ezekiel doesn't start at the time of the end. Ezekiel starts on the 5th day of the 4th month, and yet he typifies that whole experience. He has in his letters, he has a letter that's dated the 1st day of the 1st month. He has a letter that's dated the 10th day of the 7th month. He has a letter that's dated the 1st day of the 5th month. He has letters that are dated each of these dates that we have in this line here. So we can see that Snow's letters, Ezekiel, and this movement all typify the same thing. And what they're typifying is this big line. And
so that where you have the Levites line, you're saying that's the big line now? The Levites are the big line?
This line, which is the parable of the 10 virgins. Because the parable of the 10 virgins are the first and second angels' messages in Millerite history, Ellen White says.
So can I ask if the PBM, is the PBM the behold the bridegroom cometh? Is that the message?
In our history, it's symbolized by that, but it's not about the second coming, because even in Millerite history, was it about the second coming?
Yes.
Well, but did Jesus come back?
Well, no, but that was what the message was. Yeah.
Good, but you understand the point. Jesus didn't come back. So Ellen White has 3 applications of the parable of the 10 virgins. She applies it to Millerite history. She applies it to the end of the world in the big sense.
Yeah,
and then she applies it to this movement here in the first and second angels' messages that are repeated in our history.
Well, that is when I read those quotes, I understand that to be talking about the Millerite movement, right?
But she also applies it to ours because we just read it. She says,
okay, so first and second angels' message, meaning it could be either.
Has been and will be fulfilled to the very letter.
Gotcha. Sure.
And she compares it to the first and second angels' message. She says that the 4th angel, which is the second angel, is going to join the 3rd angel, which starts here on October 22nd, 1844. It's going to join it, and it joins it here at 9/11, right?
Yes.
4th angel arrives at 9/11. We don't change any of that. That's God-given. So it arrives at 9/11, but she says you can't have a 3rd without a 1st and a 2nd. So she's also implying that even though the second angel comes here and joins the 3rd, that the 1st angel has to precede it. So in order for this 9/11 to happen, we have to have the 1st angel first come, right? This is what we've taught in this message for a long time. And then the second angel comes.
Yeah.
But the second angel in this context is going to end when the 3rd angel is empowered, and that's at the Sunday law. Now, when we look at our big line, what we were doing that I had trouble with.
Where do you put the second angel's empowerment? Midnight Cry still? Panium?
Yes. Raphia is its formalization and its empowerment. This would parallel Midnight and the Midnight Cry. So this is the line of the Levites. But my point is, this is the first and second angel's message. This is the first and second angel's message. But in our history, the 3rd angel is going to be empowered. It doesn't just arrive at the Sunday law, because in our history, we're already under the proclamation of the 3rd. And so this special history here, that this movement is about getting Seventh-day Adventists ready for the Sunday law. This is our work. This is what God has given in this time. Seventh-day Adventists have to stand at the Sunday law. They have to be able to, we have to have a message to prepare Adventists, which are Levites, because the church isn't going to accept that, the structure. And God has used, just like he used Samuel Snow, or just like he used Ezekiel, just like he used different people, we're being typified by these groups. So this work that the priest is doing is a special work so that they can give this message to the Levites. But then the real goal is that the 3rd angel's message will be proclaimed with power, because it arrives on October 22nd, 1844. But the 3rd angel's message is not empowered here. They don't even know about the Sabbath here yet. But at the Sunday law, the 3rd angel's message is empowered. and then the gospel can go to the world. So you have the loud cry and then the close of probation, right? So everything that we've been saying about our lines, the problem that we've been doing is we've been looking at the line of the priests as if it's not typical, as if it is actually the real line. And so we were looking for us to be lifted up as an ensign here on July 18th, when that doesn't occur until the Sunday law. Samuel Snow's letters, they don't really have any power in them until these events occur, right? He's just a development of truth. This is a development of truth. Now it's powerful. Snow's letters are powerful, but until they're proclaimed at midnight in the midnight cry, they don't mean anything yet. So this message that we have, these events have to occur in order for this message to show its significance. Without this message, you can't have midnight in the midnight cry. You can't have Raphi and Peniam in any prophetic significance. Even if those events occurred, if you don't have a prophecy about them, they're not going to mean anything prophetically.
So what is the prophecy that we have about them in the PBM?
It's what we've been teaching this whole time. Everything about Daniel 11. But the point is, we were expecting that to be fulfilled.
Say that again. So the PBM, let me get my question clear so you can answer what I'm trying to understand here. The PBM message is Daniel 11, 40 to 45?
Well, it's all of Daniel 11. Understood that Daniel 11 contains within it Daniel 11, verse 40 to 45 is a concentration, a concentrated message, which all of Daniel 11 expands upon. Our message is Daniel 11. That's the message of this movement.
So the PBM is Daniel 11.
Yes, it's Daniel 11, and it's all the light that's been given in this history that we have experienced, because in order for this movement to have any significance, we had to go through an experience. It would have been fine, we could have talked about Bible prophecy all we wanted to, but we wouldn't have understood it until we passed through this experience. That is, I studied out all these things in the 2520, the Babylonian captivity, these chiasms in the story of Ezra, Samuel Snow's letters, all these different things that are pieces of the puzzle, Josiah Litch's prophecy, all these different things, before we had any time setting, right? Before we were even talking about predicting a date. But we were talking about the events, Raphi and Peniam, that we had to make a prediction about these events, right? And then God gave us this light that seemed to point to those events happening within our line. So we thought, oh, they're going to happen now. Raphi is going to be at November 9th, and Peniam will be at July 18th, right? That's sort of simplification of it. But yet those events didn't occur. And they didn't even occur at November 9th, right? So November 9th never happened the way that we expected.
Yeah.
I mean, the division happened, which I expected, but a lot of things that we were talking about, Islam, the king of the north, the king of the south, those don't occur at November 9th. And yet we were still expecting that was Raphia. And we should have said, well, it couldn't have been Raphia. Raphia still has to be future. So one of the things was, well, maybe Raphia was a period and it ends at July 18th. And then Panium's a period from July 18th to December 25th. Different things were thrown around. The Millerites did the same types of things. And what I'm saying is that everything that we've experienced is meant for us to have a solid message that we can now, at Raphia and Peniam, we have to give those same messages. The messages we gave here, Samuel Snow's letters that he wrote here, he still had to proclaim them in Boston and Exeter. We still have to proclaim them at Raphia and Peniam. And we still have to proclaim them to the Levites. But this time they will be with power, because this experience that we experienced was a very powerful experience. Don't get me wrong. This is an extremely important experience for us to be able to do that work that's before us. If we don't appreciate this experience, if we say it was error, that we were somehow deceived or deluded, whether it's self-deluded or whatever it is, then all the significance of this movement falls away. We actually have nothing to stand on. We can't even stand against Parminder.
But I have a question.
His followers. If we
saying,
reject that, we have to reject everything.
If we're saying PBM is the message of Daniel chapter 11, and I assume in that we're inculcating the Ezra 7:9, we're also putting in there, Ezekiel 4, like all of these things, right?
Yeah, these things actually help us understand this whole message. But Daniel 11 is what? Raphi and Peniam, right? The king of the north and the king
literally, yes. Obviously, that's the
north.
messages in verses, like what, 4 through 15 or whatever, yeah.
So our message is being empowered over the Daniel 11, right? That's what's going to be empowering our message.
I can
so then you would say, well, why did we have all this other light that's not in Daniel 11, right?
Well,
that's what you're trying to ask.
So I have a very specific question then.
Yeah.
We're calling it, and I'm trying to understand you correctly, that it was a line of failure is what we were on. Now explain what you mean when you say that we had this line of failure predictions.
Well, it's a failed prediction.
Not just the July 18, but like 11:9 was a failed prediction. There was a failed prediction of Midnight Cry with Daniel. These were all.
Well, I wouldn't say Daniel's is a failed prediction. His prediction was correct.
It was a Midnight Cry?
Yeah. That Midnight Cry occurred on October 13th, 2018. That's for certain.
Well, then we're not even to the Midnight Cry yet. And in the PBM.
But you understand what I'm saying. This is what we experienced was not this, right?
Okay.
This was the line of the priests. We even understood that the Midnight Cry we are experiencing on October 13th wasn't this Midnight Cry.
So then what we're saying then is that the line of the priest is the line of failed predictions. I guess I'm not trying to be like.
No, because in this line, we were experiencing Millerite history. Is Millerite history a failed prediction?
In one sense, yes. In one sense, no.
In every sense, everything they predicted did not occur, right? Nothing that they predicted occurred on October 22nd, 1844. What predicted was something else, right?
Well, they had the right message, the wrong event, as the way Ellen White says it, I believe.
Okay, the wrong event, but their time was correct. So I'm not saying our time was wrong. I'm saying our timing was correct. That was given us by God. But we had a wrong event. And in Snow's letters, does he have the wrong event?
Yes.
Yes. So in ours, do we have the wrong event?
Yes.
Right. So these parallel each other.
So by my count so far,
yeah.
So by my count so far, we have predicted it's either 6 or 7 events, and they were all not what we said they were going to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're all not what we said they were going to be. November 9th was exactly what I thought it was going to be.
No, the movement, not you.
I know.
Individual, but the movement was wrong about what we as a general people were predicting.
Well, and that's because the movement was under a deception, because Parminder was a deceiver.
So when I say that we have had all these events that were wrong predictions as a movement, that's what it is. That's what PBM is, the movement, right? Because that's not talking about an individual. That's talking about the movement.
Okay.
So when I say that we had these failures, then you're in agreement?
But this is talking about the true movement within the movement. That is, the PBM is an experience that we experienced. Many people fall away in this history, just like they do in the history of Snow's letters. This is a time when people are falling away, right? People are falling away. But this is a prediction before midnight. And when I say it parallels Snow's letters is not a person. The
Right.
prediction before midnight is not necessarily the movement. The movement makes this prediction, but the PBM itself is the artifact that's left over, just like Snow's letters are the artifact that's left over, right? And this artifact, Snow's letters, the message here and the message here are necessary for these to be the midnight and the midnight cry. If Samuel Snow doesn't have these letters and this message that's developed, he has nothing to say at Boston and nothing to say at Exeter.
When his letters come to an end on July 18,
yeah,
he was not predicting an event there. It's still a future event.
I know, but his letters are typical, right? You understand with typical, it just like Ezekiel, he's acting out events, but the events that he's acting out are not the events themselves. When he makes a copy of Jerusalem and sets up sieges and he lies on his left side and he eats food like a siege, that's not the siege of Jerusalem, right?
Right, but he's predicting a siege that's going to be in the future. Even Ezekiel isn't talking about the event that he's doing.
Right.
He's talking about a future event.
Right. So it's typical. So that means Snow's letters are typical. That means they're not the event themselves. That's the problem. I kept saying that our line was typical and that I wasn't certain that we could expect to predict external events. Because of the typical nature of our line, I was uncertain as to whether we could actually predict an event on July 18th. And especially when November 9th never occurred, there wasn't an external event. Now, there was an internal event, which we all recognize there was an internal prediction that was fulfilled. And so I say that July 18th fulfills that internal prediction. It's the end of the Snow's letters. It's the confirming of the covenant. God gave us all this light. So just because the event doesn't occur is no reason to say that the line isn't real, because it's a typical line.
Okay, right? That's fine. But my question then is, because there's just, in order for me to understand it, in order for me to be able to receive it, I guess.
Yeah.
There's things that I'll have to reconcile.
Right.
So when you say this, then we should have never been predicting July 18. If we were typifying Snow's letters, we should have been typifying the third angel's empowerment Sunday law. If we're typifying Snow's letters, because Snow's letters aren't pointing to July 18, they're pointing to October 22nd.
But July 18th typifies October 22nd, because July 18th is a symbol of 187, and October 22nd is the 10th day of the 7th month. It's the 187th day of the year. And I understood this quite well long before, right? This is one of the
movement did not
point out to people.
Okay, you keep going back to what you understood. My concern.
What I understood is the light. Like this prediction of July 18th, I realized that people did things with it that wasn't intended, but that wasn't because there was some deception going on. God ordained that we should make that prediction and that we should predict the destruction of Nashville. That's God ordained. God ordained that in order for this line to have its typical significance, it had to have a prediction. It had to have.
But it didn't mean that the prediction had to be July 18th.
Yes, it does. The prediction had to be July 18th. In order for this to parallel Snow's letters, it had to be. God designed it from the creation of the world that this would happen, right? Which I've shown that it's not something that's a gerrymandering, on God's part. It's something that's built right into prophecy from the very beginning, right into the construction of the sky itself. It's 187 days.
So can you have
187 days from the spring equinox to the autumnal equinox?
I got that.
God built that in, right? So my point is, we had to do this. We had to go through this experience. The Millerites had to go through their experience. If they didn't, none of this would mean anything, right? God understands what we need to learn, and he brings us through an experience, and that experience includes a disappointment. When we question July 18th and say we made some mistake that wasn't God ordained, then we're questioning God. My point is
No,
that
I'm questioning
God,
our interpretation. Hold on, that's not
No.
fair. I'm not.
No,
I
you're
can't accept that.
God. No,
I
you're
cannot
not
accept that. If I don't understand it, Theodore, I'm not questioning God. What I'm questioning is you right now. But in general, I'm not even questioning you. What I'm trying to question is that when we as a movement make a proclamation, and we're going to say that the movement is what this is symbolizing. If the movement didn't understand these things, if this wasn't what was being taught, that July 18, you know.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm still saying you're questioning God. I understand what you're trying to say, but I'm saying that if we understand that God was leading us, right? Now, if God wasn't leading us,
I think God is leading us. Listen, I think God is leading this movement. I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be having this discussion with you if I didn't believe that.
So good. So you
I believe that.
So if he was leading our movement,
I also recognize that we, just like the Millerites that we typify, we had a certain level of mistake. Like we had to in order to typify the Millerites.
Exactly. And were they ordained by God?
Oh, of course.
Okay, and that's all I'm saying is I'm saying we made mistakes. I'm not denying that, but I'm saying that we have to recognize that if we made mistakes and this movement is of God, then we can't, I'm not saying that we shouldn't examine things in the sense of question, like look at things and try to see whether we were right or wrong and where we went wrong. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying in the big, broad picture of things, if we believe God was leading us, then we have to accept that everything occurred providentially. God provided all of that information to us. We have no example in a line where we can take this as some deception that we need to then reject as an error, ask for forgiveness, and denounce. We have no example of that in any line.
Of course we do. Miller wrote Apology and Defense. He absolutely apologized for what he did. And so, but that's not the point. My point is that they made a mistake and they recognized.
Okay, I have to correct you there. When Miller uses the term apology, he's talking in a theological sense. Sure. An apology is not an apology in the way that you're talking about it. An apology is, no, listen, I'm explaining something quite clear that has been misused in this message. Miller never apologized. He uses this word apology and defense. Apology means a reason for your actions. It's not an apology in the modern sense of the word that he admits he was wrong. He actually says he wasn't wrong, that he was led by God. And he gives all of the reasons. That's why it's called an apology and a defense. They're actually almost redundant terms. He is not apologizing. Miller never apologizes for being deceived or under delusion or making a mistake in that sense.
And I don't disagree with your
good.
analogy.
Then you're not going to use the term that Miller apologized.
When I say apology, I think you're misinterpreting what I'm saying.
But you said that he apologized. And I said we shouldn't apologize. And you said Miller apologized.
No, he did apologize. And
he didn't.
You're assuming that I mean apology in the modern sense. And so what I'm telling you.
But I'm using the word apologized here. So you're saying that we need to apologize. I'm the one who used the word apologize, right?
Okay.
And I'm defining apology in the modern sense.
Okay, but that's
you can't use Miller's apology, which is a different sense of the word.
Allow me to interrupt.
Yes.
Allow me to interrupt.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Kelly.
Okay, dial it back, guys. Dial it back, boys.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, dial it back. I apologize for interrupting in the modern sense. Now, I hear what both of you are saying, but all we need to do is look at the quotes, look at the references. Where does William Miller say I'm sorry, or what does he mean?
And he never does.
It seems simple. So instead of arguing about whether he did or not, let's just pull up the quotes and look at them.
Okay. Well, we don't even need to look at the quotes though, because Larry
already is right, Fedor.
Yeah. So Larry has already said that Miller wasn't apologizing in the modern sense, that he accepts that Miller was actually giving a reason for his faith. That's what an apology is.
Okay. So,
and
Larry, what do you mean? Larry, stop.
Just let me
So,
finish.
Larry, what do you mean?
But it's not about what Larry means. I'm the one who used the word apology.
I know, but we are trying to come to an understanding of what Larry is trying to say. So let him say it.
Okay.
I don't think we should apologize for the sense that we were not being led of God. I'm not saying that we should apologize in the sense that we are not the movement that God has led. What I'm saying is that in so much as that we were wrong, which is that a bomb did not go off in Nashville.
Mm-hmm. Which we all admit.
Right. And and that's fine. Right. So we know that we were wrong about that. We should be able to concede to people that we were wrong. And I'll read a quote.
But we always have. We always have. Has anybody, Larry, has anybody suggested that we were right about Nashville, that a bomb went off and just nobody knows about it?
Yes. In fact, people point to that cloud. People point that there's something did happen. There are people that are making kind of excuses using those things as if something actually did happen in reality in Nashville on that day.
Okay,
and I'm saying that's not reasonable.
Okay, Larry, I don't think anybody used the cloud as a reason that something happened in Nashville that fulfilled that prophecy. I never got that from anyone.
I just go look on the chat, it's there.
Well, I've never seen it. What people say about the cloud, because the one who primarily talks about the cloud is Patrick, right? Pat Rampy. And I've talked to him about it. And I'm the one who sort of first pointed out the cloud, I think. There might have been somebody else who noticed it. But I spent a lot of time looking at it. And what I showed is that the cloud was a sign to us that we were correct about the date, but we were wrong about the event. Nobody teaches that Nashville was hit by a nuclear bomb just because.
I want to make an offering here, guys. Yeah. I want to make an offering here. The quote that Larry was maybe thinking of, but I don't know. Yeah. This one comes to mind. No matter by whom light is sent, we should open our hearts to receive it with meekness, the meekness of Christ. Mm-hmm. But many do not do this. When a controverted point is presented, they pour in question after question without admitting a point when it is well sustained. Oh, may we act as men who want light. May God give us his Holy Spirit day by day, and let the light of his countenance shine upon us, that we may be learners in the school of Christ. And there's something, when anything came to our attention in 1844, we kneeled down. We did not understand. We kneeled down and asked God to help us take the right position. And when we were able to come to a right understanding and then we were able to come to a right understanding and see eye to eye. There was no dissension, no enmity, no evil surmising, no misjudging of our brethren. But if we but knew the evil of the spirit of intolerance, how carefully we would shun it. So I'm going to suggest, you guys are going around in circles. We need to just pray about this at this point.
Yeah, well, I agree with you in a certain sense, Kelly, but right now we have to look at something here on this board, and Larry's asking questions.
No.
Trying to answer the question. And so I was making a statement here that there is nothing about
Okay, I get it.
To make an apology.
You want to make the point, and this is going to be my last interruption. I'm sorry.
Okay. Because I have to finish the study.
Yeah, I know.
It's open for people to study.
I know, but your voice is agitated. So if you can just take a breath and calm yourself. Okay?
I'm not agitated, Kelly. No, I
No,
want to finish.
Hold on. What I'm saying is your voice sounds agitated.
Okay.
So if you can modulate your voice to speak a little calmer.
Okay. Yeah, I was speaking loud. Sometimes I think if I speak louder, the person will listen to what I'm saying. But I want to make this point clear. The point was...
I'll make a point there too, that when I speak louder, it actually closes the ears of the person who I'm trying to reach. So just speak calmly and slowly.
Okay, I'll try to do that. So the question was about an apology, right? And Larry said that Miller apologized. But I wasn't talking about a theological apology. I'm talking about the idea that we have to apologize to Nashville for the prediction, that we have to tell everybody we were wrong. That's not what Miller did. He actually explained why he did what he did. In that sense, we do make an apology, right? We write out all of our reasons and show why we believe we were correct in making that prediction. Some people are saying that we have to go back. So my point is, when we look at these lines, we have no example of any time in this place within the lines that you have a movement that is under deception that then has to go back to where they started and apologize for everything that they were teaching in that movement. We have no examples of it. But that is what is being suggested by some people, is that we have to go back. Many of the people who are suggesting this are people who are enemies of this message. They never believed in this message in the first place. So they're trying to...
And I think we agree on that. I don't think that's what Larry is saying, though.
No, that's not what I'm saying Larry's saying. I'm just telling you what I'm saying. I'm not telling you what Larry's saying. This is what I'm saying. I'm trying to finish up this line. So when we deal with this PBM and we deal with Snow's letters, we have to recognize that this is in the order of God. That's all I'm saying. Now, we have to find out what we don't understand correctly, because we know that we don't understand everything correctly. Snow doesn't have everything right in his letters, and he's actually correcting himself as he goes along. But if we don't recognize that this movement was correct in making this prediction, even though the event was wrong, we have to understand that typically it represents what Snow's letters represent. And that without this, we can't give the message at Raffi and Panian. That's my point. So to me, to talk about, and I understand what Larry's saying. He's got a lot of problems here, things that he needs to resolve in his mind. That's fine. I'm not saying that he shouldn't try to resolve them. I just think that we know that God led us, which Larry also agrees. So, and we know we made mistakes. But we have to be aware that the mistakes we made were not because we were in rebellion to God, which is the suggestion that some have, that this movement was in rebellion. And I don't see that in any line in this waymark. That's all I'm saying. Now, there's still things Larry's going to want to try to understand. That's fine. And other people are going to look at this, because the reason I'm putting this out here, I wanted to make my point clear so that when people watch the video, that they understand what's being said. And that's why I welcome Larry's questions, because his questions are important, because other people are going to have those same questions. And that's the purpose of it. But we're still going to have to go and pray on our own. We definitely don't want to have contention amongst brethren, because that's not the purpose of this. This is not a competition. And part of the thing that we have to come to is this upper room experience. And it's not something that you can force. It's something that God is going to do in our hearts as we individually approach him. And it's very difficult when we have this distance and this lack of communication. And also we have still, people misrepresenting what other people teach. So, and I have a hard time with that, right? I mean, I don't like to be misrepresented. So I try my best not to misrepresent others, but I'm not sure that I can always do that, right? I'm sometimes not going to understand where other people are coming from. But I know that nobody has been teaching in this message that I have seen, that at least I can talk from my experience. I've seen nobody who says that we were right about July 18th, as far as the event is concerned. And the one that gets misrepresented in that way is Patrick because of the cloud. But I don't see that Patrick, I believe that's a misrepresentation of what Patrick's saying.
He is right.
Yeah. There are other folks that are pointing to that on a regular basis.
Okay, so what are they? They're saying that Nashville was actually hit by a nuclear bomb, but we just don't know?
No, Theodore, obviously, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, so what are they saying?
They're using it as some sort of symbol.
Right.
That God gave us a symbol with this cloud that, something happened there. We may not know what it is, but something happened.
Well, yeah, I take it as a symbol. I take the cloud as a symbol, not necessarily that something happened there, but definitely that the waymark is correct. That's the way I took the cloud.
And so my point is, and this is I just want to be clear about what I mean when I say we should apologize.
Okay.
Because I feel like I'm getting taken, like I'm saying something I'm not saying. I don't know what people are inferring, but they seem to get very distraught about.
Okay, so you're saying when I said that we don't need to apologize.
No, let me apologize. But I would like to
let him say what he's saying, Theodore.
Okay, but I'm asking.
Let him say what he's saying. Okay, give him a minute.
Did you all calm down?
Give him a minute.
Okay.
What I'm saying is this.
Give me 1 minute.
And I'll just read a quote that I think should be, and it's from Review and Herald, December 16th, 1890, paragraph 18. As I was looking at the different things about what it means to apologize or what, because obviously, and before I read this, I'll say this too. I don't think that we're going to be able to apologize, even if we wanted to. We're not going to have papers across the world pick this apology up. They don't care. And so we wouldn't even be able to do it even if we tried. I mean, we could put it out there, but it would really go nowhere. I think that's evident and obvious. And so when I say we need to apologize, this is what I mean. Brethren, I see your peril, and again I ask, do you who err make an effort to correct the wrong? Souls may be stumbling along, walking in darkness because you have not made straight paths for your feet. If you are in a position of trust, I appeal the more earnestly to you for your own soul's sake and for the sake of those who look to you as guides. Repent before God for every mistake made and confess your error. All I'm saying is the places that we were wrong, the things that we actually made a misinterpretation of, we need to make a repentance to God for that. And we need to confess the error. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. See, and I would disagree with that in the context of
that is right.
In the context of this. So when she's talking there about an error, she's talking about moral error, correct? She's not talking about an error of theological error.
It could be that you've misled. She says, put a stumbling block. You could be physically you're not following the message that you should be following in a moral sense. Or I think it could be that you've given a misinterpretation of something and that you need to make a correction, that you've misapplied something.
Okay, so let's say that's true. Either. If we made a mistake in our study, first we'd have to point out what that mistake is, right? In order to, and it would have to be an actual mistake, an error of some kind of judgment that we would need to apologize for, right?
Yeah.
So I think the error we made is a misinterpretation of the information that we had. That's what I think the error is. I think there's other things that we should look at that for myself, maybe not for you, but as a movement, we definitely put forth 11.9 publicly. Mm-hmm. And that was wrong. Clearly, nothing happened on 11.9. I think you're wrong to say that it's wrong. That's not wrong. Okay, so any of the things that we predicted happened. But that's not the point. It is the point.
He is right.
It is the point in part. I understand what you're saying, Theodore.
Because the Millerites never apologized for October 22nd, 1844. Are they wrong about October 22nd, 1844?
Yes, they're wrong. Christ did not return.
Right. And so what they say is we were mistaken in regard to the event, right? Because we thought that
the next day we got a vision. The next day there was a vision from God in a cornfield.
Yeah, but nobody knew about that until years later. So it wasn't understood by the movement, right? So I know that Hiram Edson had this vision, but it wasn't known.
Right? It was known to some people. Of course it was.
Well, known to a couple of people, but the movement didn't know about it. Nobody cared about what Hiram Edson saw in the cornfield, right? In the Millerite movement.
I don't know that. No, I can't just write to that.
I do know it. Okay, so I'm telling you that nobody knew about it. It wasn't.
You have to show me. You'll have to show me that, because my understanding is not what you're trying to tell me. My understanding is that, of course, obviously the movement didn't know it the next day.
No, they didn't know it until after the Adventist movement occurred. Right.
It was
so until much later, years later.
Okay. You're not getting a chance.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'll just say this. I'll let you finish your study, because it's clear that we're not going to have. You're not respecting me, and so I'll let you finish your study.
No, that's not fair. I'm respecting you. I'm allowing you to speak and ask all kinds of questions.
No, you are allowing me to speak, but you also keep telling me that you know, and that's not respectful. All right, because I do know some stuff. Like, I do have an experience, and I do know some things, and you belittle me, and you do it frequently. And I'm not trying to call you out. I'm not trying to be. It doesn't bother me. I accept it. We have personality.
Okay. I'm not belittling you. I'm trying to do things that I understand. So I'm teaching. You're asking questions, right?
Right. Well, sort of.
And
I'm meeting you. So I would say this. I'm asking you questions because I'm testing your theories that you're putting forth. You asked us to ask you questions. Do you understand these things? Yes or no? Tell me where you think I'm wrong, where you think I'm right. So I'm obliging your request because I earnestly want to understand this. I'm coming to you because
so let me answer your questions then.
Okay.
So when it came to October 22nd, 1844. This event was not understood until years later, correct? Right?
No, wrong.
That they didn't know in the next year what had happened. It took them time to understand, right? Under the next year, they started to understand about the sanctuary was in heaven, and this happened gradually, correct?
It started the next day, and yes.
Yeah, and it started the next day in our history too, but that's not the point.
Whoa, hold on. Who had a vision the next day? We're a small group. If somebody had a vision about how to explain anything, I would like to know who it was.
We didn't have a vision. We don't need a vision because we have to have something that parallels that vision.
What's the parallel to that vision then?
The light that we had regarding July 18th.
That was before. That's not after. That's not a day after the prediction.
Actually, I had it July 17th. If you want to say I had the vision on April 24th, and I presented it on April 26th to Jeff and everyone.
So you had a vision, not the movement.
But Hiram Edson had the vision. It's not about a person. The movement didn't have a vision on October 23rd, right?
No. So you're saying it's an individual now, Samuel. So this is my problem. Sometimes an individual.
Larry,
I don't understand this.
No, you keep putting words into my mouth all through this presentation. You are putting words into my mouth. I'm not saying it's an individual. I'm saying that this movement had this light even before July 18th, that the prediction was going to fail. Now, it doesn't matter who gave that light. The point is we already had the explanation. And on July 19th, I presented it. I presented it on July 18th. I wrote a paper and explained some things, or a letter anyway. So I explained already the problem. So
how can it be that you did it before when Hiram Edson did it after? Like that doesn't parallel. If you if someone, anyone, whoever it was that had this understanding that it was going to fail before it happened, that wasn't the experience of Millerites. That doesn't repeat to the very letter. That's something totally different.
Because you're looking at people instead of understanding what was happening in the Millerite movement.
Not. I'm looking at lines.
In the Millerite movement, we already had an understanding about the sanctuary, and they had the key to understand their disappointment prior to October 22nd. That is, the key
for the first disappointment, not for the second disappointment. No one was saying before the second disappointment that they were wrong, that it really wasn't going to happen.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they had the key to their disappointment was actually in Samuel Snow's message that he gave at midnight in the Midnight Cry. The key to the, Ellen White actually uses that term, that the key to their disappointment was in the message of the sanctuary. So when Samuel Snow started talking about the cleansing of the sanctuary in the 10th day of the 7th month, what was hidden in that was the idea that they didn't see fully, but that this was talking about something that was not the earth, but that was actually in heaven, because they knew Christ was the high priest in heaven. So what I'm saying is that in this prediction here, in this July 18th prediction, we had the information that we needed to understand regarding July 18th. Now, I understood it prior to July 18th. That is, I had the information, and I even suggested if the prediction fails, what it would mean. It would mean that our line is just typical and that it parallels Samuel Snow's letters as being typical. So I already understood that. Now, I didn't fully understand it until the next day. That is, it took me some time to process it. And then we presented that on July 19th. So on July 19th, if you watch the video of July 19th, I explain why our prediction failed. Now, it's not about me as a person. It's not about who Hiram Edson was or who Theodore Turner is. The objection that you have is that we didn't have the answer, but I'm saying we did have the answer. The answer is already here, and we have to take time and study it, right? That's the view that I have. Now, people have to examine it. You have to examine it. Other people have to examine that and say, is that correct? And they have to do the same thing with, Hiram Edson's understanding, even though, it wasn't published until much later. People might have heard as a rumor about something that somebody saw, Jesus going to the most holy place or whatever. But the point is, hardly anybody in the Millerite movement even accepted that explanation. Only 50 people out of 50,000 accepted the idea that Christ had actually cleansed the heavenly sanctuary. So it was a really minority position. The movement itself never accepted it, right?
So, I'll leave it at this. I'll let you finish your study.
Okay. Well, I don't mind your questions.
So,
but I think that you have to listen to my answers fully, because when I give an answer, and you continue, in my view, you're not letting me finish an answer, and you're asking good questions. It's not like they're bad questions. It's just it takes time. And my initial point that I wanted to clarify, I want to see that that's clear, at least that people understand the point. I'm not saying they have to accept it, right? I'm not saying you have to accept all my explanations. And I understand that you have lots of things in your mind you have to clarify. Other people do too. That's why it's good you're asking these questions, because other people have to look at it. But I need to be able to explain how I understand it. And so when I start talking about what I think that we need to do, and that we shouldn't be apologizing, I think that you really do agree with me, but you word it differently, right? Because you agree that we were right. You don't think that July 18th was some kind of a delusion.
I think that when I read the quote from Ellen White, I think that it fits our context. And I think that we should literally be willing to express to people what we got wrong.
Right.
And say, We
I agree.
alarmed people to a large degree that live in a major metropolitan city in the United States, whether they live there or had relatives there or just personal concerns about this event that was going to take place. We caused people distress.
And that's good.
I'm
and
sorry.
I would say that's a good thing. I think that was the necessary thing that actually had to happen. The more people should have been alarmed by our prediction than were alarmed. I don't think very many people took it seriously. But I think that was a necessary thing. That's one of the things that had to happen about the July 18th prediction, is that the Nashville warning had to go out. But you would admit that July 18th can't be wrong as a date. That as a date, if it's not correct, then we have some major problems with this movement, right?
No, not necessarily. It means we have some major problems with our interpretation. And I think this becomes...
Okay, but you're talking about interpretation of the date. I'm talking about the chronology itself. So the chronology itself...
I'd have to agree with that, Theodore. Larry, if the July 18 is not accurate or correct in being a date indicated in the prophetic line, a lot of things crumble. I think the whole prophetic lines crumble. That's from my simple understanding.
Yeah, and this is my point, is that I think that few people, and people don't like when I say this, but there's a reason why few people understand all of the evidences that went into July 18th. First off, they hardly have been presented in this message. That is, you know, I have some videos here and there that people might have seen at some time in their life, but most people aren't familiar with all the pieces of the puzzle that led to July 18th.
May I ask a question, Theodore?
Yeah.
Did the Millerites use the April 19th date to figure out October 22nd?
Yes.
How?
No,
What do you mean how?
Well, after next, I said, after this week, after the next 4 week, be October 22nd.
Yes, correct. Correct, Mark.
So how did the Millerites use April 19th to understand the date of October 22nd? It's a very straightforward question.
Yeah. Well, and what they did is they understood that this is the biblical calendar, that this is the start of the Jewish year. And in order to have the 10th day of the 7th month to be October 22nd, you have to have April 19th be the first day of the first month. And they understood that at April 18th at sunset, that the Jewish year began. So they'll often say April 18th, but what they mean is the Miller's prophecy ends at sunset on April 18th. And then later, in order to understand this was the first day of the first month, they had to use that to make the calculation for October 22nd, 1844. And that's how we know this is the first day of the fifth month and this is the fifth day of the fourth month, is because we knew if this is the 10th day of the seventh month, then April 19th is the first day of the first month. July 21st is the fifth day of the fourth month, and August 15th is the first day of the fifth month. It's just how the Jewish calendar works.
So then my second question would be then, on the Millerite line, there were two dates that you could say they had mistakes, which would be April 19th and October 22nd. Is that correct?
Well, they also had August 11th, where they believed that probation was going to close. They also believed that Jesus was going to come back at the beginning of the spring in 1843. They also believed he was going to come back in the fall of 1843. They also had March 21st, 1844, and then April 19th.
So what I'm wondering is, because there's information here that you're sharing that I haven't been able to find, like the August 11th date, where you say that they believed it was a close of probation. Is that something that you could provide?
Yeah, I did provide it in the study I did on we did a series of studies on the disappointments of the Millerites, and we read the statements of Millers, Josiah Litches, and Joshua V. Himes, and they all agreed that when Turkey would fall, that the third woe would begin because the seventh trumpet would begin to sound, and that probation would close on August 11th, 1840.
So
and
that's a quote you could provide for us.
Yeah, I have the quote. I actually did send it out. I sent it out to everyone also in an email.
So then when you say they also thought Jesus would come in the spring and Jesus would come in the fall, you're saying those are different dates outside of April 19th and October 22nd, or is that those two dates?
Yeah, these are in 1843. So because they had 1843 originally as, you know, Jesus is coming back in 1843, and they didn't understand completely those events, even though Miller had corrected that in December of 1842, they still took time for them to understand the calendar. So as they moved through this history, they kept setting dates that failed. So we call this the first disappointment, but it's not. It's just the point at where Miller's prediction had completely failed. That is, by the time they got here, Miller's prophecy could not go any further.
Okay, so just to clarify, just clarify what you just said, that the Millerites made many predictions that failed. And their specific dates. So you're saying August 11 you can call a failure because at some
point, of what they were expecting to occur in regard to the close of probation.
So that's one date of a failure. April 19th is another date of a failure. October 22nd is another date of a failure. That's 3. And you're saying there's many more. Yeah, there's the spring of 1843. There's the fall of 1843. So specifically the 10th day of the 7th month. And then also December 31st, 1843, because some believe that once that year passed. And that's why Snow was doing the presentation in Boston on December 31st. He's giving his personal testimony because they're expecting maybe Jesus would come back. Now, Snow knew he wasn't going to because he already understood it would be in the fall. And then also March 21st, 1844, they also expected him to come back then. And then April 19th. So they had these 2 different starts to the Jewish year. Because initially, the Jews started the year on March 21st in 1844. So some thought that must be the correct one. But other people had said, no, it's going to start on April 19th. But people were disappointed all the way through. Okay. So with that clarification, you know, so basically you're saying our failures, multiple failures, because I've counted 7 dates so far that what we said was going to happen did not happen. We can say that something internal happened, but there's no evidence of anything internal happening except for this waymark on the line that is now a waymark on the line of a failed prediction, and then using that failed prediction on the line for some kind of structure. Like there's nothing that happened that we see. It's something internal happened is what you say. I don't know, you know, it's.
Okay, well, October 13th, 2018, something happened at noon on October 13th. I calculated that it was 391 and a half days to November 9th, 2019.
Yeah, but
and that was
nothing actually happened in the world. That was not a midnight cry.
Yeah, it is the midnight cry. And for the priests.
How?
The line of the priests.
How?
Well, it was an empowerment.
What cry went out empowered?
It was an empowerment of the message.
To the world. The midnight cry is a message that goes, it takes the message and puts it in power to the world. That's the midnight cry now. Come on.
We're talking about something eternal.
Is it because it's typical?
Yes. And that's
even
what
if
I
it
said at the
typifies
time.
it would still have to be empower the second angel's message that goes to the world. I mean, that's what it would typify.
No, it's typifying that, but it's not going to be that. That's the very nature of a typification.
Here's my question.
Did it typify? It didn't go to the whole world, but it went to the whole movement?
Yes.
But it actually didn't go to the whole movement, Kelly, because Theodore is saying the understanding that he had of it was not the understanding that the whole movement had of it.
No, that's not what I said regarding October 13th.
It is
Now,
what you said regarding July 18th, which is the date that comes from October 13th. It's very closely connected. You wouldn't have July 18 without October 13th.
Okay, so Daniel made a prediction on July 27th, and he predicted that the midnight cry would be given on October 13th. 10 days before, Tess gave the date of November 9th in two sermons. One was called 10 Years, and the other one was called The Midnight Cry. And 10 days later, the midnight cry was given. And that midnight cry was this message in relation to the 391.5 connected from October 13th to November 9th. And this message taught this. So it was something that was taught. Jeff taught it. And he taught it, at that time. But then that message was shut down, right? Because we're in a typical line. We're not in the real line. That message was shut down. And it was shut down after July 18th was already given. And
where in the Millerite line do you see that happen? Where the message is shut down at some point and then it
in Snow's letters. That's the thing. When you study Snow's letters, you see exactly that's what happened with Snow's message. So Snow wrote a letter on February 16th, and it was published on February 22nd in a magazine called The Midnight Cry. Right. Now, The Midnight Cry was a minor magazine, still owned by Joshua V. Himes, but Signs of the Times was their main magazine, sometimes called the Advent Herald. And then it was republished in the Signs of the Times. And when it was republished, they actually republished it with a disclaimer. That was published on April 3rd, which is Passover for the Jews. And it was said that we published this because Snow wants us to republish this article that he wrote in the Midnight Cry. And we publish it, but we don't think it's correct, but it's interesting. So Snow's message was suppressed through this whole history. And then we have...
does Snow symbolize the message or a person at this point?
Snow symbolizes the message. Samuel Snow's letters symbolize the message.
Is it the message or is it the movement?
It's the message.
Okay, so I guess the confusion comes in is sometimes and I'm saying this for me, some of the confusion that I'm having following why this seems, and I don't want to, why it's hard for me to receive some of this stuff is because sometimes it's the message, sometimes it's the movement, and sometimes it's a person.
Yeah, but I've never done that. So I've always been very clear.
No. You may not think you do that, but when I hear you talking,
okay,
that's what I hear.
So let me clarify. Samuel Snow is a person, but he's typical. He's Ezekiel, right? Ezekiel is typifying Snow. And Snow has a message which is represented in his letters that is the development of truth that parallels the prediction before midnight, because it is definitely the prediction before midnight. And it occurs 3 days before midnight, which is a symbol of the prediction before midnight, which Tabo illustrated occurred in all these histories of 3 days. And then we have his message is given at Boston and Exeter. The message that he gives is this message. Now, Snow is a person, but that's immaterial. He's typifying something. So what he's typifying is not a person. It's not about a person in this history here that we have to look for. And so some people were looking for somebody to be Snow, just like Jeff was Miller. Well, that was a wrong application because it's not about a person. In our history, it's not about a person. It's about a message. Now, people are used to develop this message. There's no doubt that not one person produced this whole message. All kinds of people were involved in producing this message. But the message had to have been from God if this movement is of God, because the movement adopted the message. However you want to look at it, in the end, I did nothing to promote July 18th. Once I knew that the movement wanted nothing to do with it, I stopped doing any kind of promotion. I was still studying it with some friends, and I had a closed group called the July 18, 2020 study group, but I wasn't promoting the message. I wasn't actively going around promoting July 18th.
I'd like to witness to that. We were in discussions with Parminder and Tavo, email exchanges, etc. I was part of that discussion because I also was promoting it to the WhatsApp groups for Africa and for Canada. And I was summarily called up to the front, do not do this anymore. And I'm like, okay, I will respect the leadership and I will not speak about this in a large capacity. And that's Theodore and I, we just both said, yeah, that's the right thing to do at this time.
Yeah.
May I interject a question? So when you say that on October 13th, that something happened, and the something that happened was that you stood up in the church with the date, the 391 and a half.
I didn't stand up in the church. It was actually on the way back from church, but I did the calculation while in church at noon.
Okay, so that's the event that happened on that day that we put on our line, and you're saying that's not a failed prediction, that is something that actually happened.
Yeah, and so much so that we end up creating this structure.
Before you go on to that, I just want to make my point, if you don't mind.
Okay.
That you then go on to say that you did not promote the message of July 18. And without the October 13 date, without November 9, there's no July 18. It's very confusing for me when it goes back and forth from, you know, whether it's typical or not typical, or whether it's a mistake or not a mistake. Something happened, but then I didn't promote it. And actually, I never thought it was going to happen. I always, all along, thought that it was going to be a failed prediction. But when you stood up that day and gave the message, which you're saying is the Midnight Cry message, that message was July 18.
Okay, so the message was November 9th, and I wouldn't have accepted November 9th except for the prediction of Daniel that came true on October 13th. Now, we know that this is this 63 days and this 63 days in a period of 126 days. And then what happened is on September 7th, Jeff stood up after his retirement. So this is 2018 and this is 2019. And at noon on September 7th, I was doing a calculation in the church in Warburg, listening to Jeff on my iPhone instead of the sermon. And I did this calculation. My nephew was there. He saw me doing this calculation. What are you doing? And I said, I'm counting. And so this was 391.5. But what I found is that there was a structure here, which was this 63 days. And September 7th was connected to this structure. There's more to the structure. March 27th is the center of these two dates, March 27th, 2019. And this unfolded to the point where Jeff actually ended up picking this date, January 11th, 2020. And he had written this on a board, and we found that he was connecting this to March 27th, 2021 by a period of 441 days, which was 63 weeks. And this was 63 days. And he called this the midnight chiasm. So he connected this period of 126 days with this period of 126 days. So on September 7th, we were in the midst of this apostasy at Baal Peor, right? So this apostasy is going on in this movement. And I'm getting drawn into the apostasy like many people are. That is, I'm submissive to leadership, and I'm also being deceived. Parminder has been lying to me about what he was actually teaching. And so as I go from that week, from August 29th, and I start to see what's happening, I get to September 7th, and Jeff is going to give this message. And the message he gives is at the right time. It's part of this structure. And It's not an accident. We've done lots of study into the September 7th and what it means. In Ezekiel, September 7th is the 6th day of the 6th month of the 6th year. So it's a symbol. Well, it's the 5th day of the 6th month of the 6th year, but it goes into that. And so it's a symbol of 666. And this structure, these dates here, 9/7, 11/9, and 1/11, when they're added together, add up to 327, which is a symbol of March 27th. And if I do them the Canadian way, what's that?
Could you repeat the part about the 5th day of the 6th month of the I'm confused there because you said 6 and then you said 5 and then you said 6.
So in Ezekiel, his vision in chapter 8, verse 1 begins on the 5th day. It's on September 7th. And it begins on the 5th day of the 6th month of the 6th year. And it moves into the 6th day of the 6th month of the 6th year. So it connects this to 666. That's what I'm saying. You'd have to see the study on Ezekiel. We go through that in detail. But the other point is when we took the Canadian way of writing these dates, 7/9, 9/11, and 11/1, and you added them together, you got this date as, the 11th day of the first month, like this. It adds up to 1,101. Now, we could argue that this is some kind of numerology, but the point is this was just an affirmation of a structure that existed that Jeff saw. And,
oh, wow.
and my point is that it all ties together, and there's 4 major chiasms in our history.
It is so fun. No letter,
Mark,
not say a Disney call.
Okay. So my point here is that this structure that started on October 13th gave us all this light. Now, what we would have to say is that Jeff was wrong about what these dates meant, right? That's what we would have to say. So we would say that the Jeff was somehow deceived, but Jeff is actually just doing things. He's recognizing things that have happened. So Jeff accepted this structure, right? You agree that you saw Jeff present this structure, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Jeff, you saw that Jeff presented this structure from June 9th to October 13th, and then from September 7th to January 11th, and then to March 27th, 2021. You've seen Jeff
I've definitely seen him present the structure, but I wouldn't say that he's the one that came up with all those dates on his own.
No, but he came up with some of them, and he's the one who came up with the structure. That is, he's the one who saw this whole structure. No one else did. Jeff is the one who created this structure. He's the one who studied it and came up with it. That's his thing. And he called it the Midnight Chiasm. Now, parts of it were understood by other people, but Jeff is the one that came up with this. I didn't come up with this. And neither did Stephen or Dilio. That's Jeff. Jeff came up with the Midnight Chiasm. But the point is, we could then testify that these dates were not just random dates, that they occurred in a structure that was impossible to have occurred by chance. Now, some people say, well, then our whole thing is just based upon odds and chance and numbers and mathematics. But the thing is, these events did occur. September 7th did occur. Jeff didn't plan to stand up and awake from his sleep, his 5 months of retirement, and choose September 7th for any particular reason. And November 9th wasn't chosen by Jeff. That was chosen by someone else. But it was affirmed by this October 13th date. And even the January 11th date, Jeff picked it before he even knew it was part of a structure. So he didn't pick January 17th because it was 63 days after November 9th. He had actually been talking about January 11th and then realized that it was part of a structure. So in all of this, nobody was going through and cherry picking dates to create a structure. That is my point. Things happen. Now, you could argue that the things that happened weren't what we expected necessarily. But when I saw Jeff stand up on September 7th, I knew that this meant something. It affirmed the structure, and it meant that Parminder was wrong. And that's why I stood with Jeff. Now, I didn't, I wasn't from the time of February to September 7th promoting July 18th. But when Jeff got up on September 7th, I wrote him an email and I wrote a paper called September 7th. And I explained this structure again with July 18th in it. So I deal not with this so much, but with the 252 days from November 9th to July 18th. And Stephen, he's taking things that he already understood regarding December 25th, 2021, and July 18th, that this is 777 days. So he has this structure, which he has at the beginning of the movement, starting on November 9th, 1989 to December 25th, 2021. So a bunch of people started working on this structure, these things that were happening, and there's way more to it. So it was very confusing, but the movement did accept all of these things were presented in the movement, and they were presented by Jeff.
So when you say this is a line of, when you say this is a line of false predictions, what do you mean when you say that?
Okay, so when I then continued studying this, I found that there was actually a bigger structure than what Jeff had here, that this midnight chiasm is part of a bigger chiasm called the 777 chiasm, and which I'm not going to do right now, but I did that presentation on July 17th.
I've seen it.
And explained why it was possible that the prediction would fail based upon the failed predictions. Now, some of those dates are not dates within our movement. It's, December 21st, 2012, September 23rd, 2017. Both of these dates are outside of our movement, but they end up being structurally in this line in a way that is extremely profound. So my suggestion back on April 24th, which I wrote to Jeff on April 26th, is that there was a possibility that this line was telling us our prediction would fail, but nobody wanted to hear it. Now, I'm not trying to lift myself up in that. I'm just saying there's something that I saw, and that was the explanation. On July 18th, I knew that if the event did not occur, that it would not be an end of our movement, because I already understood that the line was typical. I didn't know whether an external event could be predicted in our line, and I wasn't sure about that. And I tried to tell people that, but it's not trying to lift me up. I'm just saying that I have the explanation for why July 18th could be a failed prediction. And it was, but it doesn't mean that this is wrong, because the very chronology that showed me July 18th also gave me other dates. For instance, from before November 9th it's 777 days before November 9th. On September 23rd, 2017, I was at Lambert Church. So this is obviously not in context of what's above. But on September 23rd, 2017, 777 days before November 9th, I was presenting July 18th as the prediction before midnight. Now, it wasn't a date, July 18, 2020. It was just July 18th as a symbol, because I was presenting Samuel Snow's letters, and Tabo had presented May 2nd as the symbol. But I said July 18th, because it's 3 days before midnight, shows us that all of Samuel Snow's letters are the prediction before midnight, ending with July 18th as the symbol of prediction before midnight, because it's 3 days before midnight. The fact that I presented that 777 days before November 9th is pretty profound. But also, on September 23rd, 2017, evangelicals had made a prediction based on Revelation 12 that the secret rapture was going to happen, or 1,260 days of persecution was going to begin, and their prediction failed. And it's a fact that this 777 days has a failed prediction, but it also has our prediction built into it, connected to November 9th, connected to this chiasm, this structure. And then I looked at the beginning of the failed prediction, which was the 21st of December, 2012.
May I interject before I
Yeah.
lose my thought? So you just said September 23rd was a failed prediction. July 18th was a failed prediction. November 9 was a failed prediction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yes.
3 failed predictions where predictions are built off of failed predictions.
Right. Our prediction is built off a structure that contains failed predictions. Mm-hmm.
And you can't sympathize at all with somebody struggling with the idea that we continue to have failed prediction after failed prediction using this structure.
But the Millerites did.
The Millerites did what?
They had failed prediction after failed prediction using the same prophecies again and again. And so we paralleled the history of the Millerites in making failed predictions. Adventism is founded upon a failed prediction.
I don't see it the same way, because what I see in Millerite history, and maybe it's because I'm not as well versed as you are with Spirit of Prophecy quotes, but what I see is they had the first disappointment, April 19th, which caused them to go back and come to a date of October 22nd, where the date in of itself was correct, but the event was wrong. Yeah. So what I see is two dates where one was totally wrong and the other one was half wrong. That's what I see. I don't see failed prediction after failed prediction after failed prediction on the Millerite line.
Well, I don't see any of the dates in Millerite history wrong. So April 19th is the end of the 1335. So it has a significance. It's not just a wrong date. It's actually a significant date. And October 22nd is the correct date. But we know that they didn't understand the event the next day. They didn't understand it. Even Hiram Edson didn't really understand it. He just said that he had this vision. Years later, he wrote about it. And it doesn't actually call it a vision. He just said he saw that Christ. But if you look at actually what they were teaching initially, even people like Hiram Edson, it wasn't really anything close to what we teach about October 22nd, 1844. It took them time to understand about the cleansing of the sanctuary and what that meant. So there's, they had this, the severe shut door thing and lots of different things happening in Millerite history. My point is that we have these dates and we know that they're on this structure that has failed predictions in it. And so God gave us this information prior to July 18th to tell us that our line is typical, that these dates are significant because we know they're significant because they were significant internally in our movement. We didn't pick the dates because they fit into a structure, right? We didn't pick November 9th because it was 391 days past October 13th. It just happened to be, so the structure was, I didn't pick July 18th because it was 252 days after November 9th. I had no idea it was 252 days after November 9th. I picked July 18th because I was studying Bible prophecy, and Bible prophecy led us to that date. And then after we had the date, then we saw the structure. So God kept witnessing to what we were finding, both in the past and in the future, that these things were part of a structure, but we didn't have the structure first. The structure came from a result of understanding these events. And so we saw the events as significant. And so what I'm saying is if we're going to say that this structure is not correct, we have to show how it's not correct, because the way it was built up it wasn't contrived. It wasn't, pre-planned. It wasn't something where, we thought, well, if we do this, then this date will come and this date will come. Things unfolded providentially that we had no control over. That is, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know that these dates were going to happen. So somebody looking back now could say, well, you just picked these dates because they fit this structure, and so, no wonder they're going to work, but nothing happened on them. That wasn't the case. The dates were already picked in one way or another, either by events happening, because this camp meeting, June 9th, happened. We didn't pick this date. and then, you know, October 13th, and all these other dates structurally that they lined up with Snow's letters. I mean, we didn't know that when we had these dates here. We had these dates. I had the 120 days. Daniel had the 126 days. He gave it on July 27th. August 11th is the center. If we look at Samuel Snow's letters, this is his writing of his first letter, his publishment, his second publishment, that's April 19th. And if you take the Julian date of August 11th, it lines up 13 days later with May 2nd. And so this structure wasn't contrived. It wasn't built in some way. We actually didn't find out this structure until we had July 18th, Julian in 2020, that we then found this structure existed. We didn't even know this structure existed in Snow's letters. So that's my point, is that people are ready to throw this out and say, well, we failed. We had this failed prediction. And so, you know, obviously we must have been wrong. And so the stuff that Theodore did and Odilio and Stephen did, and that we agreed to, and that Jeff presented, it must have been wrong, right? And then, of course, if it's wrong, we have to blame somebody for it. So, you know, who you want to blame, I'm not sure, because I'm not to blame. Just because I came up with the date, I wasn't the one that promoted it. Jeff did, right? Now, obviously, after Jeff accepted that date and started promoting it, I was studying it and presenting it, but, you know, I wasn't the one. You know, it's not my fault, if you want to put it that way. And I don't think anybody's blaming.
I don't know anyone who's blaming a person.
Okay, but
I think we're looking at it and saying, but you know, there seems to be October 13th, for instance. Like this is my.
Yeah, I know people who are blaming me. So
okay, well, I'm not blaming anybody.
Okay, so but the point that I'm trying to make is that this movement made this mistake in predicting that this event would happen in Nashville. We agree it's a mistake. The question is, was all of this then a mistake? And if it was, how do we explain it? That's all I want an answer to.
So what is November 9 then? Okay, so you're saying October 13th, based on the 126 from Torrey Pellice, is an accurate date for the Midnight Cry. That's your argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then from there, we have this 391.5, and the Midnight Cry message that came on October 13th was you at midnight, at noon, making the prediction of November 9. So I'm
affirming the prediction that was already made.
Right, well, Tess made the prediction, I understand. Okay, so Tess makes the prediction of November 9, and you at noon say, well, look at this math. This is 391.5 from Ezekiel. This has got some, you know, pertinence to us, and this can't be just random. And so you're saying this is a second witness to November 9. And I'm saying a second witness of November 9 of what? Like, what is November 9 then?
But okay, let's take your point. Nothing happened on November 9th. Like nothing, you know, nothing happened that day. It still wouldn't matter because November 9th is already picked before the 391 and all this structure is picked. So we have this structure, but we know that on November 9th, this marks the separation of the false priests and the true priests being completed. That is, it is a period of probation for the false priests. That is, they have this opportunity from September 7th to November 9th, from when Jeff began to speak. They had these 63 days to accept or reject. And you know, what Tess was teaching. And they chose to accept it. Very few people turned, you know, the vast majority ended up following Parminder. So November 9th definitely symbolizes the separation between the movement. But the thing is, this structure, November 9th is already part of the structure, right?
So then you're saying November 9th is a close of probation.
Yes, that's what I taught right from the beginning. It's a close of probation for the false priests only. It's not Daniel 12:1. And it's not let him be righteous still. So I was teaching that all through that history, and it was being suppressed. Tabo was very upset with me teaching that it was only a close of probation for the false priests, because he believed that it was also going to be that those that are righteous still. So he believed that on November 9th, they were going to be perfect and they would never sin again. And I was teaching that that was false. And I taught that in October of 2018, after Tess's prediction, at the camp meeting.
If that's the close of probation, if November 9 is close of probation, the line ends there?
No, this is a close of probation for the false priests. The second coming is the end of the line, right? So this is the midnight cry. This is the close of probation, and this is the second coming. So I had the line of the priest ends on July 18th, but Stephen extended it to being December 25th, which we then said after December 25th, if we can predict events, then the Sunday law would occur after December 25th. That was the way that we understood it. Now, some people would just say, this is the Sunday law, right? Which I wouldn't say, but even though I did sometimes say that, I wouldn't say that in a strictest sense. This is just as far as we could go in the line of the priests. And my view was we could never see anything beyond the line of the priests.
Doesn't Sunday law come before the close of probation?
No. This is the Sunday law on the line of the Levites, right?
No.
This is the Sunday law on the line of the Levites. This is midnight cry Sunday law.
Hold on, this is the line of the
Levitical line. Midnight cry Sunday law. This is midnight for the priests. This is midnight for the Levites.
So where's the close of probation for the priest then?
That's the close of probation for the priests.
So then that's close of probation. Where's the Sunday law before that?
2014 is the Sunday law.
So the Sunday law then comes before the midnight cry.
Yeah, you see, you're mixing up two different lines.
No, I'm talking about the line of the priest. I just want to know about
the Sunday law. Where's the Sunday law in Millerite history?
It's typified by October 22nd is how we'd always done it in the past.
Okay. So if you understand the symbol that we use, this is, what waymark is this?
The first disappointment? For what?
9/11, right? This is 9/11.
Okay, for us. Okay, 9/11.
Yeah, well, it's 9/11. Yeah, in our history, okay? And then this is midnight. And midnight is a symbol of the Sunday law in the line itself. So it's not a Sunday law here. So this is the thing that was not well understood. And then this is the midnight cry. And then this is October 22nd, which is the close of probation. And we said, this is in our line for the Levites. Here's the Levites. Where is the Sunday law for the Levites?
Hey, Fedor.
The Sunday law for the Levites is this the Sunday law for the Levites?
Would you talk about?
Okay, is this the Sunday law for the Levites?
To call out.
Larry.
Okay, go ahead. I couldn't hear what did you.
Okay.
What did you say?
This is the Sunday law. In the big line, what is the Sunday law? What follows the Sunday law in the big line?
Close of probation.
Loud cry.
Okay, yeah, loud cry, close of probation.
And then the close of probation. So that's the big law, and the big line. And the way that this
was understood. Talk about Disney.
So the way that this was understood. Yeah. So the way that this was understood is that this part here parallels this part here, correct? So the Sunday law is the close of probation, correct? For the Levites. Right? Sunday law is the close of probation for the Levites. So on the big line, the Sunday law parallels the close of probation.
Okay, so that seems to me that we're going back to staging things if we're doing that.
No, I'm just saying for the Levites, where's their close of probation?
Well, if I'm understanding what you're teaching now, then it would be, it's all going to run parallel, or not parallel, but one after the next.
Here's the close of probation in Millerite history, right? The Sunday law for the Levites lines up with the close of probation, correct? October 22nd. This is what Jeff has always taught, right?
No, I don't know that. I'm not, I mean, I might know it, but right now.
9/11, midnight cry, Sunday law. Is the Sunday law, is October 22nd the close of probation?
Well, it depends.
No, in Millerite history, is it the close of probation?
They predicted it to be the close of probation, but no, it was not.
Okay, Ellen White says it was. She says there was a shut door on October 22nd. She says there was a shut door on Thursday.
Okay. For a certain class of people?
For Millerites, this group of people here, we're talking about the Millerites. It's the close of probation for the Millerites.
Yes, and close of probation is the second angel's message for the Protestants, right?
Right. So now the Levites parallel the Millerites. Where's the Levites' close of probation? What have we taught in this message for years? That the Sunday law is the close of probation for who?
For Adventism.
Right. Okay. And that includes the Levites, correct?
It would include the Levites, yes.
Right. Now, we know that midnight and the midnight cry, okay, the midnight cry, the way
Wouldn't that also include would that not also include the priest then, if it's Adventism?
No, the priests have their probation closed earlier. We used to have their
priests are not Protestants, and so you can't align the priest with the Protestants above.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm
the Millerites have to be, the Millerites have to have their close of probation with the priest and the Levites at the same place. If I'm following your thinking, because this is the way we have always done it, is Sunday law is for Adventism. And so that would be priest and Levites, if I'm not.
We always taught, once we had the priests and Levites, we always taught that the priest's probation closes prior to the Levites' probation. We've taught this for a long time, ever since we've had the priests.
Yes, but ever since we had it, we also taught it in a staggered form. That's why we staggered it the way we did.
I understand. So I understand, and I'm saying that we were partly right, but we were staggering it in a way that was just artificial. That we assumed that they must be staggered in that way. But what we came to understand is that the priests have their probate, they're going to have their midnight and midnight cry and Sunday law prior to or close of probation. And this is the point where we got really confused, because in this big line, the Sunday law is not the close of probation, right? In the big line, this is the close of probation.
Well, so one thing that we've also struggled with is the National Sunday Law and World Sunday Law. So National Sunday Law is SL, World Sunday Law is COP.
But that's just complicating. And just in a simple way,
that's how we always taught it. That's how I understood how we always taught it.
But I'm just saying, in a simple way, we taught that this was the close of probation for the world, and this is the close of probation for Seventh-day Adventists, right?
Yes.
And then the loud cry would parallel the midnight cry. That's what we taught.
Yes.
Okay. And that means that the Sunday law would parallel midnight.
I guess you could do that, sure. Okay.
Right. And that's all I'm saying, is that when you look at this line and you want to compare this line to how we did the big line, we would say this is the close of probation, midnight cry is the loud cry, midnight is the Sunday law, but it's not the Sunday law. That is, this Sunday law is not the Sunday law in the, it's a Sunday law, but it doesn't exist in our other lines as a Sunday law. That is, the Sunday law is an event.
So can you see my concern with that? That was what Parmenter said. He literally said we have a Sunday law in 2014, but there was no Sunday law.
Right, and I understand why he did that, but I'm not saying I'm doing that. I'm just saying what we did and how we would line those up. Now I'm actually changing that, okay, in my solution, because when I look at how we repeat Millerite history, we're repeating the first and second angels' messages. That is, we're repeating this. This part here that we have lined up is Ellen White's line, right? So Ellen White's line doesn't have us, right? It just has the third angel's message arrives, and I would put 1888 is the formalization of the first angel's message. And I would have the Sunday law is the third angel is empowered, right? So Ellen White doesn't have our line within it.
So is that the Sunday law, third angel's message empowered, then going to be Revelation 18 angel coming down? Is that where you're?
No. Revelation 18 is the second angel coming down. Right? The angel comes down.
Oh, the third angel is empowered by the Revelation 18 angel.
Because it swells to a loud cry.
It is not Fedora.
Okay. So
second and third angel come down on the earth, said he is coming back very soon.
Okay, so when we look at
you are warned about that one.
Okay, thanks, Mark. So when we look at Millerite history, this is the parable of the 10 virgins, right? It goes to October 22nd. And Jeff has always said 9/11, midnight cry, Sunday law since 2016, correct?
Yeah, I think that's.
And that means that
fair.
this event is the end of Millerite history, and that when the third angel arrives, this is now not Millerites, this is Seventh-day Adventists, correct? And so we're at the history of Seventh-day Adventists ever since 1844. And Seventh-day Adventists are under the proclamation of the third angel's message. And in the third angel's message, the Sunday law is going to be the empowerment of that third angel's message. When we look at Millerite history compared to ours, we see that the parable of the 10 virgins that's fulfilled to the very letter is this history from 1989 to the Sunday law. I'm not saying that this doesn't typify the end of this, but Ellen White has this line only. She doesn't have this line only as the idea that in order for the third angel to arrive, the third angel to be joined by the second angel, you have to have the first angel come and the second angel come before the Sunday law. So Ellen White is implying. Yeah. Okay, Mark. I'm dealing with
one small thing I have asked you.
Yeah.
Could you talk about Disney to call out?
Not tonight.
No, please.
Okay.
Please, this is bugging me.
Okay, well, I'll talk to you later then, once I close with prayer. So Ellen White is talking about this Sunday law. And in order for the Sunday law to occur, Ellen White is saying that the second angel is going to join with the third angel. And the second angel is tied up with this. It's the thing that ends up empowering.
She says the second angel is going to join with the third angel?
Yes. I read the quote at the beginning. If you want
not
me
the
to
Revelation 18 angel. She says the second angel is going to join with the third angel after 1888. Yeah.
So when she talks about the angel of Revelation 18, she calls it the second angel because it is the second angel. It's
no. I understand that. I just never seen. Maybe I've seen it, but I don't recall her literally saying that. Maybe and of course, if it's there, then great. But.
It's let me see if I can find it quickly. I have a lot of quotes here. That one I didn't put in bold. The one I do have here just right away, because they put this one in bold. Angels were sent to aid the mighty angel from heaven, and I heard voices which seemed to sound everywhere. Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. This message seemed to be an addition to the third message, joining it as the midnight cry joined the second angel's message in 1844. So here she's making a parallel of how they do it. The third angel's message is to be given with power. The power of the proclamation of the first and second angel's messages is to be intensified in the third. In Revelation, John says of the heavenly messenger who unites with the third angel, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, Revelation 18, verse 1 to 2. We are in danger of giving the third angel's message in so indefinite a manner that it does not impress the people. Trying to find the one where she...
Do you know what the
this is in Early Writings 277, she has more on it. And just trying to find the exact wording one. I can't see it here. I can get it to you, the one where she talks about it. But she's talking about, here it is. I saw angels hurrying to and fro in heaven, descending to the earth and again ascending to heaven, preparing for the fulfillment of some important event. Then I saw another mighty angel commissioned to descend to the earth, to unite his voice with the third angel and give power and force to his message. Great power and glory were imparted to the angel, and as he descended, the earth was lightened with his glory. The light which attended this angel penetrated everywhere, as he cried mightily with a strong voice, Babylon the Great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. The message of the fall of Babylon, as given in the second angel, is repeated with the additional mention of the corruptions which have been entering the churches since 1844. So what she's saying is this other angel that comes in Revelation 18 is repeating the message of the second angel, but it's adding these additional corruptions, right? So that's the point that I'm making, is that Ellen White says that we're under the proclamation of the third angel from October 22nd. And she says this will go to the end of time. And then she says that the second angel, this angel from Revelation 18, repeats the message of the second angel, but with additional corruptions that have come into the churches. So that has to occur before the Sunday law, right? Now, in a sense, it's part of the Sunday law. If you look at Ellen White's understanding, all of this stuff that we have built up from 1989 to the Sunday law is all about the Sunday law. That is, the repeat of Millerite history is the first and second angel's messages. And those join with the third in order to empower the third message, right? And it needs to be empowered because God's people have to stand at this Sunday law, and then they have to give the loud cry.
Where's the third angel on that line? You have the third angel empowered. Where are you placing the third angel?
The third angel arrives here. It's formalized in
the other line. The other line, the SL with the 3AE on the Levite line there.
That's what I'm saying is I don't have the third angel arrive in our history. The third angel arrives here according to Ellen White, and it's joined by the second angel. And if it's joined by the second angel, that means the first angel has to become before it, right? You can't have a third without a first and a second, and you can't have a second without a first. So in our history, yes, Mark.
You are wrong. Third angel and the fourth angel come to Jesus' grave.
Yeah, but Mark, you're talking about something different.
Let me to finish. Of third angel and fourth angel go to Jesus' grave, tell shepherds and Mary.
Yeah, but we're talking about something in the future.
Rising. He is rising off his grave.
Yeah. But this is not, we're not talking about those angels, Mark. We're not talking about those angels. These are different angels.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Two more angels, fifth and sixth angel coming to the end and the cross, tell people, they would tell his friends, don't look up the sky, just listen and obey his rules, doing things right.
Okay.
2-5, you're wrong about the date. He is will returned, he will tell me.
Okay.
I am more that I am connect with him.
Okay.
He tell me.
I understand, Mark. We're talking about something different. We're talking about something different. We're not talking about the same.
This
I
is not. It is not different. It is same thing.
Okay. Well, I'll talk to you later about it. I'll try to
just watch Jesus movie is truth.
Okay, I'm not arguing with you, Mark, about what happened when Jesus came. But getting back to this idea, if we see that our history here prior to the Sunday law is the repeat of what Ellen White talks about, the midnight cry, the 10 virgins, right? This is the story of the 10 virgins parable. And that's repeated in our history. In this history here, not in this history here, at least in how she's applying it, right? Because she's applying this message to the Levites, this history that we're calling the message to the Levites. We're paralleling this with this history. So it has a parallel, but it's not the parallel she's talking about in the context of the repeat of Millerite history. This is the repeat of Millerite history. This whole thing is not, even though the loud cry parallels the midnight cry, I'm not saying it doesn't, but as far as being the first and second angel's messages that need to be given, this is not the first and second angel's messages. This is. That's basically what I'm saying. So I know it went way longer than it was supposed to, but hopefully, that I'm putting it out there because I want people to discuss this. So I'm not trying to shut anybody down. And Larry, I do appreciate your questions. So I do appreciate your contributions.
Theodora, I just want to say, I appreciate being able to talk to you about this stuff. I am not trying to be antagonistic. I'm not just trying to ask things to be confrontational. I really try to understand. Like really want to not just hear it and regurgitate it. I really want to understand it. I need to be able to explain it to other people. There are people in my life that are going to ask me questions way harder than the questions that I'm at. They're going to come at me with things. I mean, they're very well studied Adventists, and they're going to come with stuff, and I need to be able to explain it.
And that's why I think it's important that you ask the questions. I think that sometimes the answers are a little more involved than we want, right? I mean, it would be nice if I could just answer the question in a sentence, but sometimes, I have to look at the whole picture. But I do know, in studying all this, we have to find out if there is a mistake in the reckoning of the prophetic periods, which is what people are suggesting. We have to know what that would be, right? We can't just dismiss it because the event didn't happen. And that's the thing that I fear that people are doing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I have not yet seen somebody go through and show where all the pieces of the puzzle that were first put in place before we even had time setting, to examine them and say, are those correct? Because those are the pieces that led to the July 18th prediction. And we didn't, even the November 9th prediction, Stephen predicted November 9th before he ever heard of Tessa's prediction. And his is much more solid. Tessa's prediction isn't really solid. I only endorsed it because I recognized that it fit into what I had studied in all the other prophecies. But I still didn't even accept the conclusions of what she had for the events that were supposed to follow. I just saw the significance in the date. So, now, and again, I'm not trying to say that I was right and other people were wrong. I'm just saying that there was error being taught. I saw some of that error and some of it I didn't, right? Some of it I got caught up in just like anyone. But it was the chronology and the dates that God gave us that actually saved me from that. And that made me see that we were on the right track in rejecting Parminder. And believe me, Parminder was extremely attractive to me. My dad had just died, and my dad taught basically what Parminder taught. And so I understood more than anybody what Parminder was teaching because I grew up with it. And so my decision, when I was there in August, at the end of August, I'm saying, maybe my dad was right. And I had to reevaluate everything. I had to look at this whole picture. And it was extremely attractive to me from a human point of view. And I saw all the implications, many that many people didn't see, because I knew where this led, because I had studied basically that history of what Parminder was teaching, his Protestant theology. I studied that in my grandfather's books and in my dad's books, both who were ministers. And so I understood that side of things. But the thing that saved me was the chronology. I couldn't shake it. It was too solid. And I knew that Parminder had rejected it. And I left it in God's hands before September 7th, actually even before August 29th, about 2 weeks before September 7th. I had surrendered all to God. And I said, God, I don't know who to follow, because I was confused by Parminder. But I said, I'm leaving all things in your hands. And I'm going to go whichever way the chronology goes, because I knew that was something that I could trust. And I actually believed that Parminder would accept the chronology. So I was very surprised when he rejected July 18th. It didn't make sense to me that he would do that. So I think that as a movement, we have to be very careful. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we have to have good reasons. Doubt is not a good reason. You have to have something solid, a good explanation that is consistent with the lines and the light that God has already given us. And I just can't do it. I can't unravel what God has woven and say, this was all a deception. I'm not saying you are saying that, but I've had personal communications with people who are stating that this whole thing was a deception and that I was the deceiver, that I'm the one who deceived. I'm Parminder, basically, again, right? So that's just a reality. And I don't mind the personal attack. That doesn't bother me. I'm more concerned about other people, what they're doing. If they're going to reject light, they have to reject it for a sound reason and not for misrepresentation. And I know we all misrepresent what other people think because we don't understand everything that other people think. But, and that's why I did this presentation. And hopefully, I know people might not want to watch the whole thing, but I don't think that you and I are at odds with each other. I think that you and I are both just trying to understand. That's my view. And if somebody
I'm still trying to work out exactly how I'm settled. Like I am genuinely trying to like, I have ideas and I have my own thoughts about things, but I do trust that God is leading the movement, and I know the movement is split. I'm trying to listen to both sides. I do have some issues with the failed predictions. And I
know you don't have a lot of time either, but we did the studies on, if you're going to watch something of mine, The Disappointments of the Millerites is a really powerful series because we learned a lot there. And, that's something that I would watch and try to look at it and understand, how this movement parallels the Millerite movement. But I think we're getting more and more light. And that's the thing about it is we've been going through Ezekiel. It's like, we're just seeing things that we never saw before. And it's extremely powerful, but I know many people aren't watching it, right? There's this kind of infighting going on. And I don't think that's what we should be doing. We should be studying together. And, there's a suggestion, and I'm not sure if I fully understand it all, but, sometimes, people are saying, well, why am I doing videos? And I mean, I question that myself. So initially, Jeff had taken time off because he had to, I wasn't interfering with anything he was doing. I was doing studies before July 18th to try to get people caught up. And then after July 18th, if Jeff was doing morning classes, I wouldn't be doing anything, so I didn't want to be in that position. I even took a week off to just pray about it and figure out what it is God wants me to do. And, so I know I have this understanding of July 18th and how we came to it that not many people have. And also I am a teacher. I know how to teach and try to simplify it, and I keep working harder and harder at it. But I can't think for other people. Other people are going to have to do their own thinking. All I can do is present what I found. So, but you understand my concern, right?
I mean, obviously, I think that everyone is sharing a similar concern. Obviously, they're coming from different places and different ideas, but I think the concern is legitimate that we have two different ideas that are going on in the movement right now, and they need to get reconciled. Whatever.
And we know that we need to hear them, right?
No, I'm listening to,
right.
Whoever is putting stuff out. I try to listen. I don't listen to every single thing that you put out because you put something out every single day. And you're right. Yeah. I don't listen to every single, but I do listen to them. I try to, I don't know how I pick them. I just sort of look at them and go like, okay, that one title sounds interesting, or whatever. If you say something on Sabbath, I hear you say something, and I'll be like, okay, he spoke about it in a couple of weeks or a week ago or whatever. I'll go back and try and find that. And so, I try to listen to at least as much as I can of everything that's coming out.
Have you been able to get a chance to hear any of Larry's sermons, to hear his side of it, his perspective in a sermon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I don't see what Larry's doing is destructive.
Not me.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I want to hear what other people have to say. And I've heard some good things. Noel, I like the article that he wrote, and Heather, I thought that was nice. I agreed with it. I agreed with the idea that Parminder brought in this deception. I do think that there's more that needs to be understood, even by me, about all this stuff, right? So just because I understood July 18th better than anyone else doesn't mean I understand the rest of this message in a lot of detail, right? There's lots I don't know. And so I think that we need to be able to communicate with each other, but there shouldn't be the sort of disrespect. Now you say I disrespect you, I don't. I just felt that I wasn't being able to explain my answers, and your questions were coming too quick, for me, because I was trying to answer questions. I didn't have enough time to answer them before the next question came. But I understand, those are the questions that come into your mind. So for me, I just wanted to get those ideas out there. And I'm not treating people like I think they're stupid. Though sometimes I've always come across that way my whole life. And I've gotten better at it. Heidi has helped me a lot. I don't usually say to people anymore, you're wrong, let me explain why. But sometimes I do in other ways. So, it's obviously not the best way to communicate.
I don't, those things don't bother me. I sympathize with that. People say the same things about me. I'm a strong personality. And so I come across aggressive. I that's not going to hurt my feelings. I was just simply saying that because we're on a public forum.
Right.
And I don't, and I'm trying to ask questions in a way that isn't confrontational. Right. Because I don't want it public confrontation. Like if I were to ask you more confrontational questions, I would call you privately and ask you.
Yeah. And I think, it's just I didn't have enough time. Like I was trying to answer questions and another objection would come up and I hadn't really finished the first one. And so obviously we weren't communicating very well, but that's understandable. You and I are very different in how we think. So that's going to happen. But my point is that I think the people have to be heard. We definitely don't want to shut anyone down as far as how they try to explain things. But we also need to take time. One of the things I've always done is I spend more time reading and studying things that I disagree with than things that I agree with. Now, some people think that doesn't make much sense, but I want to know what people are saying and I want to understand them, because that's the only way I can communicate with somebody who thinks differently than I do. I have to at least understand what their language is, what their perspective is, and I don't want to misrepresent it in communicating with people. But also, I tend to learn when I study what other people say, I often learn things from them that I had misunderstandings about in my own thinking. So, and that's because Satan sometimes has people who are teaching error, holding on to a truth so that that truth won't be recognized. So he mixes truth with error. One is to make error more palatable, but also to give discredit to things that are true. And Parminder did that. Parminder taught some things that were true, but he also mixed in a lot of error. And the reason why we accepted his error is because the truth made it so powerful. But then we also, if we reject everything Parminder did, then we would also be rejecting things that he said that were correct, which was why we actually believed him in the first place. You know, so like Jehovah's Witnesses believe in the state of the dead, as we do. But somebody, if they say, well, I reject Jehovah's Witnesses because of what they teach about Christ, so I reject everything they teach, they would also reject the state of the dead. And that's why people reject the state of the dead often, is because it's a Jehovah's Witness doctrine. So I think we have to be very careful. So anyway, we should close with prayer. I really appreciate all you people hanging in there and listening to Larry and I talk. And,
you forgot something, Fedor.
Yeah, well, you're going to have a study, you said, on Facebook Live?
Yes, I do it tomorrow.
Oh, what time tomorrow?
Different time. 3 till 8.
Okay. Anyway.
I am asking, you forgot to say Disney, midnight at night cry.
Yeah.
It is, you know what?
Destiny.
Could you tell us about that?
Okay, well, we're going to have to do that another time, Mark.
No, what now?
I can't, Mark. You got it close.
Hey,
okay.
Don't dare tell me about closing.
Well,
we have
to, it's already
11 o'clock.
It's already 11 o'clock. I went 2 hours over. So, okay, let's pray. Okay. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for the study this evening. And we know that there's much that we still need to understand, that I need to understand. We also know, Lord, that we are all different. I know that I'm different from Larry. He's different from other people. But you have put us together as a body for a purpose, so that we can learn from one another. Help us to have the meekness and lowliness of Christ, that we can receive teaching even from the lowest of us. And I thank you, Lord, for Mark, who participates in these studies. I know that you've been teaching him and all of us in ways, things that we can't understand with the natural mind. So we leave all things in your hands. Please be with us throughout this Sabbath day and help us to have a blessing, the blessing that you promised to put in that day. Be with each person and in their particular struggles and needs. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.